Today, I'm going to tell you about a girl who was betrayed by the entire world on the most defining night of her life. The night the man she loved publicly destroyed her before 5 wolf packs, just to seize power. But what happened after that? No one saw coming. This is the story of Elara Vane, the girl no one chose, who rewrote the entire world. Stay until the end to see how she did it, and don't forget to like, comment what city you're watching from. Now, let's start from the beginning. The stone floor was always coldest at dawn. Elara Vane had learned this truth the way she'd learned everything else in her 17 years, through her knees, through her raw fingertips, through the ache that lived permanent in her lower back. She scrubbed in silence, as she always did, her brush making wet circles against granite that would never truly be clean. Not in the eyes of the pack. Not for someone like her. The Blackridge pack house loomed above her, all dark timber and sharp angles, built to withstand the brutal winters that came howling down from the northern peaks. It was still dark outside, the kind of pre-dawn darkness that felt thick enough to choke on. Through the narrow windows, she could see snow beginning to fall again. It always snowed here. Even in summer, the mountains kept their white caps, kept their distance, kept their secrets. She wasn't supposed to have secrets. But she did. Elara paused, sitting back on her heels, and allowed herself one forbidden moment. She looked up at the great hall's vaulted ceiling, at the banners of the 5 allied packs hanging like judgment from the rafters. Blackridge, Ironpaw, Stonecrest, Ashenmoor, Bloodmark. Each one represented power, legacy, strength. Each one would send their finest to tonight's ceremony, the Harvest Moon ceremony. Her stomach twisted. Still here? The voice cut through the silence like a blade. Elara's head snapped down, her silver eyes, the cursed eyes that marked her as different, fixed on the wet stone. She didn't need to look to know who it was. Mira Thorne, Beta's daughter. Beautiful, confident, cruel in the casual way that came easy to those who'd never known real suffering. I asked you a question, freak. Elara's fingers tightened on the brush. She nodded once, keeping her gaze down. You know what tonight is, don't you? Mira's boots, fine leather, probably cost more than Elara would see in a year, stepped into her line of vision. Everyone's talking about it, about him. Kael. Elara's heart did something painful in her chest. She kept scrubbing. Oh, don't pretend you don't care. Mira laughed, the sound sharp. Everyone knows. The orphan Omega with the creepy eyes has been mooning over our future Alpha since you were old enough to know what a mate bond was. It's pathetic, really. The brush kept moving. Circles, steady circles. He's going to choose tonight, you know, his mate, in front of everyone. Mira crouched down and Elara could smell her perfume, something expensive and floral that didn't belong in these harsh mountains. And I'll give you one guess who it won't be. Elara said nothing. She'd been forbidden to speak without permission since she was 12, since the day her voice had accidentally shattered every window in the orphan house during a nightmare. The pack elders had called it dangerous, unnatural. They'd called her cursed. They'd been calling her that her whole life. Look at me when I'm talking to you. Elara didn't move. A hand shot out, grabbing her chin, forcing her face up. Mira's eyes were cold, satisfied. There. See? This is why no one will ever choose you. You're not just weak, you're broken. And tonight, when Kael stands up there and claims his true mate, I want you to remember this moment. I want you to remember that you were never even a possibility. She shoved Elara's face away and stood, brushing invisible dirt from her dress. Finish the east wing before breakfast, and try not to bleed on the floors. We have guests coming. Her laughter echoed long after she'd gone. Elara sat there in the darkness, her jaw aching where Mira's fingers had dug in, and felt something old and tired crack a little deeper inside her chest. She'd known, of course. Known the truth that everyone else had known for years. Kael Draven, future Alpha of Blackridge, strongest warrior of his generation, the boy she'd loved from a distance since childhood, would never choose her. How could he? She was nothing, less than nothing. An Omega without a family, without a voice, without even the basic respect afforded to the lowest-ranking pack member. She slept in a room the size of a closet. She ate scraps. She wore cast-off clothing that never quite fit. The other Omegas at least had each other, had families, had some measure of dignity. Elara had silver eyes and silence. She went back to scrubbing. By the time the sun finally broke over the eastern peaks, painting the snow in shades of pink and gold that would have been beautiful if she'd had the energy to notice, Elara had cleaned 3 halls, 2 staircases, and the main gathering room where tonight's ceremony would take place. Her hands were shaking. She told herself it was from cold and exhaustion. She told herself it had nothing to do with the fact that in less than 12 hours, everything would be confirmed. Made official. Made public. Kale would choose someone else. And she would have to watch. Elara. The voice was softer this time, familiar. She turned to find old Marin standing in the doorway, wrapped in the tattered shawl she always wore. Marin had been the one to raise her after her parents died, or disappeared or abandoned her depending on who you asked. No one really knew. Elara's first memories were of this pack house, of Marin's gnarled hands teaching her to scrub, to stay quiet, to survive. "You need to eat something," Marin said, shuffling forward with a small bundle wrapped in cloth. "Before you fall over." Elara shook her head, but Marin pressed the bundle into her hands anyway. Bread. Half a roll, probably from yesterday, but it was something. "Thank you," Elara whispered, the words barely audible. Speaking still felt like breaking a law, even to Marin. The old woman's eyes, faded brown, tired, searched her face. "You're going tonight." It wasn't a question. Elara nodded. "Child," Marin's voice cracked. "You don't have to. You could stay in your room. No one would fault you." But they would. They'd call her a coward. They'd say she was too weak to even witness pack tradition. And more than that, some desperate, stupid part of her needed to see it, needed to watch Kyle make his choice, needed the reality of it to finally kill whatever foolish hope still flickered in her chest. "I'll be okay," Elara lied. Marin didn't believe her. Elara could see it in the way the old woman's shoulders sagged, in the way she reached out and touched Elara's cheek with one papery hand. "You were always too brave for your own good," Marin whispered. "Just like your mother." Elara froze. "You knew her." But Marin was already turning away, shuffling back toward the kitchens. "Eat. Then finish your work. And tonight, just remember, you're stronger than they know." She was gone before Elara could ask what she meant. Bokdish. The day passed in a blur of preparation. The pack house transformed around her. Servants, the ones who actually got paid, who had status above her, hung garlands of winterberry and silver ribbon. They set up long tables laden with food Elara would never taste. They polished the wooden floors she'd spent the morning scrubbing until they gleamed. Through it all, Elara moved like a ghost, invisible unless someone needed something. "Fetch this, carry that. Move faster. Don't be seen." She caught glimpses of Kyle throughout the day. He was everywhere, greeting the visiting alphas, overseeing preparations, his presence commanding attention without even trying. He'd grown into his power these last few years, broad-shouldered and confident, with dark hair and eyes like storm clouds. When he smiled, which was rare, it was devastating. She'd seen him smile at her exactly 3 times in her life. Once, when she was 10 and had helped him find his younger sister when she'd gotten lost in the woods. Once, when she was 14 and had left wildflowers on his mother's grave without knowing he was watching. And once, last winter, when she'd slipped on ice and he'd caught her before she fell. That last time, their eyes had met. She'd felt something, a pull, a recognition, a possibility. He'd let her go without a word. Now watching him laugh with the visiting alphas, watching him stand next to Seraphine Ashenmore, beautiful, powerful, perfect Seraphine, Elara felt that possibility shrivel and die. "Stop staring," someone hissed. Another servant, older, looking at her with pity and annoyance. "You'll only make it worse for yourself." Elara lowered her gaze and went back to work. By evening, the great hall was full. Elara had been ordered to stay for the ceremony. All pack members were required to attend, but she'd positioned herself in the furthest corner, in the shadows behind a pillar where she could see but hopefully not be seen. The hall blazed with firelight, with the warm glow of hundreds of candles. The visiting packs filled the space with their noise, their laughter, their easy confidence. She felt like a stain on the edge of something beautiful. The ceremony itself was ancient. Every generation, during the harvest moon, unmated wolves of age could declare their chosen mates before the gathered packs. It was political, strategic, necessary. Alphas chose strong mates who would strengthen alliances. Betas chose within their rank. Omegas rarely got to choose at all. Brothers and sisters of the 5 packs, the voice boomed through the hall. Alpha Marcus Draven, Kale's father, current leader of Blackridge, stood at the head of the room, commanding instant silence. He was an imposing figure, scarred and gray-haired, but still radiating power. Tonight, we gather under the harvest moon to witness bonds that will shape our future, bonds of strength, bonds of alliance, bonds that will carry us through the brutal winters ahead. The crowd murmured approval. We will begin with the most important declaration of the evening. Marcus gestured, and Kael stepped forward. Elara's heart stopped. He looked different up there, in the firelight, wearing formal pack regalia. He looked every inch the alpha he was born to be, strong, certain, untouchable. My son Kael has reached his 23rd year. As future alpha of Blackridge, his choice tonight will determine not just his path, but the path of all who follow him. Kael's gaze swept the room. For one impossible second, Elara thought, hoped. His eyes passed over her without stopping. I have made my choice, Kael said, his voice carrying easily through the silence. I claim as my mate. The hall held its breath. Elara Vane. The world stopped. Elara couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Around her, the silence shattered into shocked whispers, gasps, confusion. People were turning, looking for her, and she couldn't move, couldn't process what she'd just heard. Kael had claimed her. Her. Step forward, Alpha Marcus commanded, and his voice was cold, confused, angry. Somehow, Elara's legs moved. She stumbled out from behind the pillar, into the light, and every eye in the hall locked onto her. She felt their judgment like physical weight, felt their shock, their disgust, their complete incomprehension. Kael was looking at her now, really looking at her for the first time in years. She searched his face for something, love, recognition, anything, but his expression was blank, empty. Kael, his father growled, low and dangerous. What is the meaning of this? I claim Elara Vane as my mate, Kael repeated, louder this time. The bond words, the official declaration. Once spoken before the packs, it was binding. Elara felt something shift inside her, something clicking into place, ancient and powerful, and I reject her. The words cut through her like glass. I, Kael Draven, future alpha of Blackridge, reject Elara Vane. Our bond is severed. She is nothing to me. Pain, agony, the bond that had barely begun to form shattered, and it felt like something vital was being ripped from her chest. Elara gasped, stumbling, her vision going white at the edges. Around her the whispers turned to laughter, to satisfaction. Cruel, someone muttered, but necessary. Did you see her face? An Omega? What was he thinking? Through the haze of pain, Elara looked up. Kael was still watching her, and now she could see it, the calculation, the cold strategy. He'd claimed her just to reject her, publicly, in front of everyone, to make a point. Seraphine Ashenmore. Kael turned to the beautiful woman standing with the Ashenmore pack. You are my true choice. Will you accept? Yes. Seraphine's voice was smug, triumphant. I accept. The hall erupted in cheers. Elara stood there, bleeding from a wound no one else could see, and finally understood. This hadn't been random. This hadn't been impulsive. Kael had planned this, had orchestrated her humiliation to prove something, that he was strong enough to reject even a potential mate bond for political gain, that he put pack before everything, that she was so worthless, even destiny itself could be discarded. Remove her, Alpha Marcus ordered, disgust clear in his voice. Hands grabbed Elara's arms. She didn't resist as they dragged her from the hall, away from the celebration, away from the laughter. They threw her out into the snow, into the darkness, and she landed hard on frozen ground. The door slammed shut behind her. For a long moment, Elara just lay there, face down in the snow, feeling nothing. The cold was a mercy. The silence was a mercy. Then, slowly, she pushed herself up. Her entire body shook, from cold, from shock, from pain that went deeper than bone. Blood dripped from her palms where they'd scraped against ice. Her breath came in ragged gasps that clouded the air. Above her, the harvest moon hung huge and red in the sky, a blood moon. Elara had never seen one before. They were rare, ominous, spoken about in whispers. The old stories said blood moons meant change, meant power shifting, meant the old laws waking up. She looked at it, that crimson moon, and felt something shift inside her, something that had been locked away, suffocated, silenced for 17 years. They'd taken everything from her parents, her voice, her dignity, her hope. And tonight, in front of everyone, they'd taken even the cruelest scrap of possibility. Elara stood. Her legs shook, but she stood. She'd spent her whole life being silent, being small, being nothing. Just once, just this once, she wanted to exist. She wanted to be heard. The old laws said singing was forbidden for Omegas, that her kind of voice was dangerous, unpredictable, wrong. They'd beaten that lesson into her, had made her swallow her words until she'd almost forgotten what it felt like to let sound free. But they'd already destroyed her tonight. What more could they take? Elara walked away from the pack house, away from the light and warmth and celebration of her own humiliation. She walked until she reached the edge of the forest, where the ancient pines stood like sentinels and the snow lay thick and untouched. She tilted her face up to that blood-red moon, and she sang. It started as a whisper, barely more than breath, but with each note, something inside her loosened, unwound. Her voice grew stronger, clearer, filling the frozen air with sound that shouldn't have been possible from someone so small, so broken. She sang without words, just pure sound, pure emotion, all the pain and loneliness and desperate aching need to be seen poured out into the night. The snow around her began to move, not falling, rising, spinning in spirals that matched her voice, that danced to the melody she created. The air itself seemed to shimmer, to respond, to recognize something in her that no one else ever had. Elara sang louder. She didn't notice when the windows of the pack house began to crack. She didn't notice when the celebration inside fell silent, when people rushed to the windows to see what was happening. She didn't notice when the ground beneath her feet started to glow with symbols that hadn't been seen in 1,000 years. She just sang. For herself. For the girl who'd scrubbed floors in darkness. For the child who'd been silenced. For the woman she'd never had the chance to become. Her voice rose and rose, climbing higher, reaching for something she couldn't name. The forest seemed to lean in, listening. The moon seemed to burn brighter. And somewhere, far away across territories she'd never seen, something ancient and powerful lifted its head. Something heard her. Someone answered. The wind changed direction, coming from the north now, carrying a scent that made every wolf in the pack house freeze. It was wrong. Too old, too strong, too other. It smelled like winter itself, like the space between stars, like power that had been sleeping for so long the world had forgotten it existed. Elara's song faltered. She felt it before she saw it, a presence approaching, inevitable as dawn. Her voice faded to silence, and the snow settled gently back to earth. But the symbols carved in light beneath her feet continued to glow. From between the trees, a figure emerged. He was tall, impossibly tall, with hair like starlight and eyes that burned silver blue. He moved with the fluid grace of something that had never known fear, had never needed to. Power radiated from him like heat from a flame, and every wolf instinct Elara possessed screamed at her to run, to submit, to recognize something far above her in every hierarchy that mattered. But she didn't run. She stood there, shaking and spent, and met those burning eyes. "Hello, little singer," the stranger said, his voice like distant thunder. "I've been waiting a very long time to find you." Behind them, the pack house doors burst open. Kael rushed out, followed by his father and half the gathered wolves, all of them armed, all of them staring in horror at the impossible figure standing before Elara. "Valor," Alpha Marcus breathed, his face gone white. Valor nix. The ghost stories tell about you, someone whispered. The old king, the first alpha. But you're supposed to be dead? Valor smiled, and it was not kind. His gaze never left Elara. No, just sleeping, waiting for the one voice that could wake me. He took a step closer to Elara, and the wolves around them tensed, ready to fight, ready to defend, even though every instinct told them it was useless. Do you know what you are? Valor asked her softly. Elara shook her head, not trusting her voice. You're the last of a bloodline that ended 1,000 years ago. The last singer. The last one whose voice doesn't just make sound. It shapes reality itself. He reached out, and she flinched, but his hand was gentle as it touched her cheek. They called your ancestors the Weavers. They could sing life into the dying, could call storms with a melody, could remake the world with their breath. That's impossible, Kael said, his voice strained. He was staring at Elara like he'd never seen her before. Is it? Valor glanced at him, and the contempt in that gaze made the future alpha take an involuntary step back. You rejected her, cast her aside for politics and power. He laughed, low and dangerous. You threw away a queen to claim a pawn. She's Omega, Marcus said, but his voice wavered. She's nothing. She's everything. Valor turned back to Elara, and his expression softened. And she's been calling me for 17 years, whether she knew it or not. Every silent tear, every swallowed scream, every moment she survived when she shouldn't have. Her soul has been singing across the void, and tonight she finally let it free. Elara couldn't speak, couldn't process. This had to be a dream, a hallucination brought on by pain and shock. But the hand on her cheek was warm, real. The old laws are clear, Valor said, his voice carrying to every wolf present. A rejected singer under a blood moon can claim the one who answers her call, the one whose soul recognizes hers. He went down on one knee in the snow before her, this ancient king, and offered his hand. I answer, Elara Vane, I claim you, if you'll have me. The world held its breath. Don't, Kael started forward, something like panic in his voice. Don't listen to him, Elara. He's manipulating you, using you. Like you used her? Valor didn't even look at him. At least I'm offering truth, choice, the freedom to become what she was always meant to be. Elara looked down at that offered hand, at this impossible being who'd crossed whatever distance separated them just because her broken voice had called him. She thought about the pack house behind her, about her room the size of a closet, about 17 years of being nothing. She thought about Kael's cold eyes as he destroyed her in front of everyone. She thought about Marin's words, "You're stronger than they know." Slowly, Elara placed her hand in Valor's. His fingers closed around hers, and power flooded through her, not taking, but giving, not controlling, but awakening. She gasped as something fundamental shifted inside her, as if parts of herself that had been locked away suddenly remembered how to breathe. There you are, Valor murmured, standing and pulling her gently to her feet. There's my queen. Around them, the snow began to rise again, spinning in spirals of light. The symbols beneath their feet blazed brighter, and Elara felt her voice returning, stronger now, no longer something to be afraid of. She looked back at this pack house, at Kael, who stood frozen, his face a mask of denial and dawning realization. At all the wolves who'd dismissed her, mocked her, treated her like she was nothing. I accept, she said, and her voice rang clear and strong across the frozen ground. I claim Valor Nix. The bond snapped into place like lightning. It was nothing like the weak, broken thing with Kael. This was ancient, powerful, absolute. It sang through her veins like fire, like music, like coming home after being lost her entire life. Valor pulled her close, and she could hear his heart beating in time with hers. Welcome, he whispered against her hair, to the rest of your life. Behind them, the pack house erupted in chaos, shouts, arguments, fear, but Elara barely heard it. She was too busy learning what it felt like to be seen, to be chosen, to be something other than the girl no one wanted. The blood moon burned overhead, and in its light, everything changed. The bond hummed through Elara's veins like wildfire, like nothing she'd ever felt, alive, electric, demanding. She swayed on her feet, and Valor's arm tightened around her waist, steady and impossibly warm despite the freezing air. "Easy," he murmured, low enough that only she could hear. "Your body isn't used to this much power at once. Breathe." She tried. Her lungs felt too small, her chest too tight. Everything was too much, the light blazing beneath their feet, the wolves staring at them with expressions ranging from terror to fury, the way Kael looked like someone had gutted him where he stood. "This is insane." Alpha Marcus found his voice first, though it shook at the edges. "Valor Nyx has been gone for a millennium. You can't waltz in here and claim one of our pack members based on ancient laws that no longer apply." "Don't they?" Valor's voice was casual, almost amused, but there was something underneath it that made the hair on Elara's neck stand up. Strange. The bond seemed to recognize them just fine. "She's Omega," Marcus insisted, and around him other wolves nodded, grasping at familiar hierarchies like lifelines. "Whatever bloodline you claim she has, it doesn't matter. She's weak, broken. She can't even speak without—" "Without what?" Valor interrupted. "Without permission? Without fear of punishment?" He laughed, and it was not a kind sound. "You people have spent 17 years trying to suffocate something you didn't understand, and you're surprised when it burns you the moment it gets air." Elara's fingers dug into Valor's arm. The world was still spinning, but his presence anchored her, kept her from floating away entirely. She could feel him in her head now, not thoughts exactly, but emotions, sensations, ancient patience, deadly focus, and underneath it all, something that felt almost like relief. "Kael." Seraphine's voice cut through the tension. She stood beside him, beautiful and poised even now, but her eyes were hard. "Say something. Your father's right. This is madness." Kael hadn't moved. He was still staring at Elara, at the way she fit against Valor's side, at the symbols still glowing faintly beneath them. Something worked in his jaw. "You can't have her," he said finally, and his voice was rough. "Wrong. I don't have her." Valor's smile was sharp. "She has me. There's a difference. She doesn't know what she's doing. She's in shock, traumatized. You're taking advantage." "Like you did?" Elara's voice surprised even herself. It came out stronger than expected, cutting through Kael's words. "When you claimed me just to reject me in front of everyone. When you used me to prove a point." Kael flinched. Actually flinched. "That's not— I didn't mean— What did you mean then?" The words kept coming, 17 years of silence breaking like a dam. "What was I supposed to think when you spoke my name and I felt—" Her voice cracked. "I felt the bond starting. I felt it. And then you destroyed it like it was nothing." "It was strategy," Kael said, but he couldn't meet her eyes. "I had to show the packs that I could put duty above—" "Above what? A person? Above me?" Elara pulled away from Valor, standing on her own even though her legs still shook. "You could have chosen anyone else, but you chose me specifically to hurt, to humiliate, to prove you were strong enough to throw away even a mate bond." "I didn't know," Kael said desperately. "I didn't know what you were— I'm the same person I was an hour ago." Elara's voice was rising now, and with it, the snow around them began to swirl again. "The same girl who's been here all along. The only thing that changed is that someone finally saw me." "Elara." "No." She cut him off. "You had your chance to speak. You used it. Now it's my turn." The wind picked up, responding to the fury in her voice. Wolves backed away, uncertain, as the temperature dropped several degrees in seconds. "For 17 years, I have been nothing in this pack. Less than nothing. I scrubbed your floors. I ate your scraps. I made myself as small and quiet as possible because that was the only way to survive." Her silver eyes blazed. "And tonight, you took the one last shred of hope I had left and you crushed it. Not because you had to, because you wanted to." "I was thinking of the pack." "You were thinking of yourself!" The shout tore from her throat, and with it came a sound. Not quite a song, not quite a scream, but something in between that made the very air vibrate. Windows shattered. Wolves dropped to their knees, hands over their ears. Valor didn't move. He watched her with something that looked almost like pride. "Enough!" Alpha Marcus roared, but his voice was strained. "Alpha, you're out of control. This is exactly why Omegas aren't allowed." "Aren't allowed what? To feel? To fight back? To exist?" Elara turned on him, and he actually took a step backward. "You built a system where people like me are disposable, where our pain doesn't matter, where we can be used and discarded and nobody even questions it." "That's not true," Marcus said, but he sounded uncertain now. "Isn't it?" Elara looked around at the gathered wolves, at their uncomfortable expressions, at the way they wouldn't meet her eyes. "Where's Marin? Where are the other Omegas? Did they even get to attend tonight's ceremony, or were they too busy serving food to the people who matter?" Silence. "That's what I thought." "This is pointless," Seraphine interjected, her voice cold and practical. "Whatever issues you have with pack structure, you can't just leave with a stranger, especially not one who—" She looked at Valor with barely concealed disgust. "Who shouldn't even exist. And yet here I am." Valor spread his hands. "Inconvenient, isn't it, when the old stories turn out to be true?" "You're dangerous, Marcus said flatly. "The histories say you nearly destroyed the world before you vanished, that your power was absolute," Valor finished. "Yes, it was. It is." He smiled, and it was terrible. "Which is why you're going to let us leave. Because if you don't, I'll remind this entire gathering exactly why my name used to make kingdoms kneel. Is that a threat? It's a fact." Valor's eyes glowed brighter. "I've been asleep for 1,000 years. I'm hungry. I'm irritable. And I just found the one person in existence whose soul sings to mine. Do you really want to test my patience right now?" The temperature dropped again. Frost spread across the ground, creeping toward the gathered wolves like reaching fingers. "Father," Kale's voice was quiet. "Let them go." Marcus whirled on him. "What?" "I said let them go." Kale finally looked away from Elara, met his father's gaze. "We can't win this fight. You know we can't. We have 5 packs here, and he's Valor Nyx." Kale's jaw was tight. "The first king, the one who faced down the ancient titans alone. We'd be slaughtered." "Finally," Valor murmured. "Someone with sense." But Marcus wasn't convinced. "She's our pack member, our responsibility. We can't just—" "You rejected that responsibility," Elara said quietly, and somehow her soft voice cut deeper than shouting. "All of you did, every day of my life." Marin's voice drifted from the crowd, thin and cracking. "Let the child go, Marcus. She's earned it." The old woman stood in the doorway of the pack house, wrapped in her tattered shawl, tears streaming down her weathered face. Other Omegas clustered behind her, silent, watching, their expressions unreadable. "You don't understand what you're asking," Marcus said, but his conviction was wavering. "I understand perfectly." Marin stepped forward. "I understand that girl has survived things that would have killed most of us. And I understand that for once in her life, someone is offering her a choice." She looked at Elara, and her smile was sad and proud at once. "Take it, child. Take it, and don't look back." Alara's throat tightened. "Marin, I'll be fine. We'll all be fine." The old woman's voice strengthened. "But you were meant for something bigger than this place." "I always knew it." "This is ridiculous," Seraphine snapped. "She's an Omega. She can't—" "Can't what?" Valor's voice was silk over steel. "Survive? Thrive? Become something that terrifies you?" He looked at Seraphine with cold assessment. "You're afraid. All of you are. Not of me. You're afraid of her, of what it means if the weakest among you can become the strongest." "That's not—" "It is." He cut her off. "Because if she can rise, then your entire hierarchy is exposed for the lie it always was. Strength isn't born, it's revealed under pressure. And this girl has been under more pressure than any of you could survive." Kale made a sound low in his throat. His hands were clenched at his sides, and when he spoke, his voice was barely controlled. If you hurt her, you'll what? Valor's laugh was sharp. You'll defend the girl you publicly destroyed? Save her from the monster? He shook his head. No, you'll do nothing, because deep down, you know she's safer with me than she ever was here. Is she? Kael's storm-gray eyes finally met Valor's burning silver. Or are you just using her for whatever power she can give you? Unlike you, Valor said softly, dangerously, I don't need to use her for anything. I have my own power. What I need is someone whose soul doesn't make me want to burn the world down from sheer loneliness. He glanced at Elara. She's not a tool. She's a partner. Learn the difference. Enough talk. Marcus's voice cracked like a whip. You want to leave? Fine, leave. But know this. If you walk away with him, Elara Vane, you are no longer pack, no longer welcome. The moment you cross that tree line, you're exile. Dead to us. The words should have hurt. A month ago, they would have destroyed her. Now Elara just felt tired. I've been dead to you my whole life, she said quietly. This just makes it official. She turned to Valor, ignoring the gasps, the angry mutters, the sound of Kael sucking in a sharp breath. I'm ready. Are you sure? Valor asked, and despite everything, his voice was gentle. This is permanent. Once we leave, there's no coming back. Elara looked back one last time, at the pack house that had never been home, at the wolves who'd never been family, at Kael, who stood frozen between his new mate and his old shame. I've never been more sure of anything, she said. Valor smiled. Then let's go. He swept her up in his arms like she weighed nothing, and Elara gasped as the world suddenly shifted. The ground fell away. No, they were rising, impossible as it seemed. Valor's power wrapped around them like wings, like light given form. Wait! Kael lunged forward, but Marcus grabbed his arm. Let her go, son. I can't. I didn't mean... But his words were lost in the wind as Valor carried Elara up and away, over the trees, over the mountains, into the night sky where the blood moon burned like a promise. Elara clung to him, her heart racing, her mind reeling. Below, the pack house grew smaller and smaller until it was just another collection of lights in the darkness. Where are we going? She managed. North. Valor's voice rumbled through his chest. To the old places, the forgotten lands where the first packs were born. He looked down at her, his eyes reflecting moonlight, to the only place left that might still remember what you are. And what am I? Dangerous, he said simply. Powerful. Free. He smiled. Everything they tried to keep you from becoming. They flew in silence for a while, the wind cold against Elara's face, but Valor's warmth keeping her safe. Below, the world spread out in shades of silver and shadow, forests and rivers and mountains she'd never seen, never even imagined existed beyond Blackridge territory. It hurts, she said finally, pressing a hand to her chest. The bond, the one he broke. It still hurts. It will for a while. Valor's arms tightened around her. Broken bonds leave scars, but our bond will help it heal faster. He paused. I'm sorry he did that to you. Are you? Elara looked up at him. You got what you wanted. You found your singer. I found you, Valor corrected. And no, I'm not glad you were hurt. I'm glad you survived it. There's a difference. They descended gradually, and Elara realized they were approaching something massive. A structure carved directly into a mountain face, all sharp angles and impossible architecture. It glowed with the same symbols that had appeared beneath them earlier. What is this place? My home. Valor landed gently, setting her on her feet. Or what's left of it. Welcome to the spine of the world, Elara Vane. The entrance yawned before them like a mouth, dark and ancient. Elara hesitated. I won't force you inside, Valor said, but it's the safest place I know, and we have much to discuss. Like what? Like what happens now? Like what you're capable of? Like... He paused, tilting his head as if listening to something she couldn't hear. His expression hardened. like the hunting party that just left Blackridge territory and is heading this direction. Elara's stomach dropped. They're following us? Of course they are. Valor sighed. Your former alpha can't let you go that easily. Too much pride. Too much fear of what it means if an Omega escapes. He looked at her seriously. They'll try to take you back, probably say it's for your own good. I won't go. I know. He smiled slightly. But they don't. Not yet. He gestured to the entrance. Come. We have maybe an hour before they arrive. I need to teach you how to defend yourself. I don't know how to fight. You won't need to. Valor took her hand, and power flowed between them again, warm and certain. You're a singer, Elara. Reality bends to your voice. You just need to learn how to make it listen. He led her inside into corridors carved from living stone that glowed with soft light. The walls were covered in symbols she didn't recognize, in a language that predated anything she'd ever seen. This was the first pack's home, Valor explained as they walked. Before territories, before the 5 packs, before any of the modern structures. We were different then. Stronger. More. Flexible in our understanding of power. What happened? We grew afraid. He stopped in a massive chamber, circular and perfect, with a domed ceiling that reflected their images 1,000 times over. Power like yours, like your ancestors. It couldn't be controlled, couldn't be predicted. So they decided to breed it out, to kill anyone who showed signs of it, to create a hierarchy where singers couldn't exist. But I exist. Yes. Valor turned to face her. Somehow, impossibly, you exist. A fluke of genetics, a miracle, a problem, depending on who you ask. He cupped her face in his hands. And you're going to change everything. I don't want to change everything, Elara whispered. I just want… What? To be safe, to be left alone? Valor's smile was sad. I'm sorry, little singer, but that option died the moment you let your voice free. The world knows you exist now, and it will never let you rest. Then what do? You get stronger. He stepped back, spreading his arms. You learn to use what you are, and when they come for you, and they will come, you show them exactly why singers were feared. Elara's hand shook. I don't know if I can… Yes, you can. Valor's voice was firm. You survived 17 years in that place. You survived tonight. You can survive this. He pointed to the center of the chamber. Stand there. Close your eyes. And sing. Just sing? Just champon. He moved to the edge of the room, but this time, don't hold back. Don't worry about control or permission or what anyone else thinks. Just let it out. Elara walked to the center of the chamber. Her reflection stared back at her from every surface. Small, disheveled, lost. She looked like a child playing dress-up in clothes too big for her. She closed her eyes. At first, nothing came. Her throat felt tight, blocked by years of fear and prohibition. But then she thought about Kael's face as he'd rejected her, about Marcus's disgust, about every moment she'd swallowed her words and made herself small. The first note escaped like a sob. The second came easier. By the third, she wasn't thinking anymore, just feeling, just releasing everything she'd kept locked away. Her voice filled the chamber, and the symbols on the walls began to glow. Brighter, brighter. The air itself seemed to vibrate in response. Good, Valor called. Now shape it. Think of something you want, something specific, and pour that intention into the sound. Elara thought of warmth, of safety, of finally being enough. The temperature in the chamber rose, not uncomfortably, but noticeably. And when she opened her eyes, she gasped. Light poured from her skin, not bright enough to blind, but steady, warm, real. She was glowing. Holy! The word died in her throat. That's it. Valor's voice was filled with satisfaction. You're starting to understand. Your voice doesn't just make sound, it makes reality. You wanted warmth and light, so you created it. Elara stared at her hands, at the gentle radiance emanating from them. How is this possible? Because you're not Omega. Valor walked toward her, his own power rising to meet hers, silver and gold dancing together. You never were. That was just a label they gave you because they didn't know what else to call something they'd forgotten existed. He took her glowing hands in his. You're a weaver, Elara. One of the first people. The ones who sang the world into its current shape. And they're going to be absolutely terrified when they realize it. As if on cue, a distant sound echoed through the mountain. Howls. Multiple voices getting closer. The hunting party had arrived. Valor's expression hardened. Faster than I expected. They must have run the whole way. He looked at her seriously. What do you want to do? What do you mean? They're coming for you, to drag you back, to lock you up, to silence you again. You can hide. These mountains have passages they'll never find. Or, his eyes glowed brighter. You can face them. Show them what you've become. Make it clear that you're not prey anymore. Elara's first instinct was to hide, to run, to avoid confrontation like she'd been trained to do her whole life. But then she thought about Marin's face, about the other Omegas watching from the doorway, about every person in that pack house who'd been taught they were less. I want to face them, she heard herself say. Valor smiled, fierce and proud. Then, let's give them a show they'll never forget. They walked back through the corridors toward the entrance. The howls were louder now, closer. Elara could pick out individual voices. Kael's deeper tone, Marcus's commanding bark, others she didn't recognize. Remember, Valor said as they reached the opening, you're not the same girl who left. You don't owe them explanations. You don't owe them anything. I know. Do you? He stopped her with a hand on her shoulder, because the moment we step out there, they're going to try every trick they know. They'll appeal to your guilt, your fear, your old conditioning. They'll tell you you're confused, that I'm manipulating you, that you need to come home. It was never home. Good. He squeezed her shoulder. Hold on to that. They emerged into the moonlight just as the hunting party crested the ridge. There were at least 20 wolves, far more than Elara had expected. They shifted to human form as they approached, and she recognized most of them. Kael led the group, with his father close behind. Seraphine was there too, along with several of the strongest warriors from all 5 packs. They'd brought an army. For her. Elara, Kael called out, relief flooding his voice. Thank that you're okay. We were so worried. Worried? The word came out sharp. You were worried? He had the grace to look ashamed. What I did tonight, it was wrong. I see that now. You see that now, Elara repeated flatly. How convenient. What changed, Kael? What happened between an hour ago and now that suddenly made you realize destroying me in front of everyone was wrong? It was second. We need to talk, Marcus interjected, his eyes locked on Valor. Without him. No. The simple refusal made several wolves bristle. Elara, be reasonable. I am being reasonable. She stepped forward, and several warriors tensed. You want to talk? Fine. Talk. But Valor stays. He's my... She stumbled over the word. He's my mate. He's using you, Seraphine said coldly. Can't you see that? He shows up the exact moment you're vulnerable, offers you power, makes you think you're special. I am special, Elara interrupted. Just not in the way you mean. You're confused. I'm clear. Elara's voice was rising again, and with it the wind picked up. For the first time in my life, I'm absolutely clear. I know what I am. I know what you did to me, and I know I'm never going back. You don't have a choice, Marcus said. You're pack. You belong to Black Ridge. People don't belong to packs. Valor's voice was quiet but deadly. They choose them. Or did you forget that part? She's not in her right mind to choose. I'm standing right here, Elara snapped. Stop talking about me like I'm not. Stop deciding what's best for me. Stop trying to control something you never understood in the first place. Kael pushed forward, ignoring his father's warning hand. Elara, please, I know I hurt you. I know I destroyed something I should have protected. But this isn't the answer. Running off with him, pretending you're something you're not. What am I pretending to be? Powerful. Important. Like you matter. The words hung in the air like poison. Kyle's face went white as he realized what he'd said. I didn't mean that came out wrong, but it was too late. Elara felt something inside her snap. Not the broken bond, that was old pain, this was new. This was the final thread of whatever had tied her to these people, to this place, finally severing. You're right, she said softly. I was pretending. For 17 years, I pretended to be small, quiet, forgettable. I pretended it didn't hurt when you ignored me, pretended it was okay to be nothing. Her silver eyes blazed. But I'm done pretending now. She opened her mouth and sang, not words, not melody, just pure concentrated rage-given voice. The sound hit the hunting party like a physical force. Wolves staggered backward, hands over their ears. The ground beneath them cracked, symbols identical to the ones in the chamber blazing to life in the stone. Elara, stop! Kael shouted, but his voice was barely audible over hers. She didn't stop. She sang louder, pouring 17 years of swallowed screams into the night air. The mountain trembled. The sky above them churned, clouds gathering with impossible speed, the blood moon flickering in and out of view. That's enough, Baelor said quietly, and his hand on her shoulder was gentle but firm. You've made your point, Elara's voice cut off abruptly. The sudden silence was deafening. The hunting party lay scattered on the ground, most of them bleeding from their ears, all of them staring at her with naked fear. She'd done that, with just her voice. Now, Baelor said, his voice carrying easily across the distance. I believe the lady told you she's not going back. Would anyone like to debate that further? No one moved. No one spoke. They just stared at Elara like she was a monster. And maybe she was. Maybe that's what happened when you took something small and harmless and crushed it for long enough. Eventually it stopped being harmless. Go home, Elara said, and her voice was steady now, cold. Tell the packs what you saw here. Tell them an Omega learned to sing, and the world shook. Tell them, she met Kael's eyes, tell them some bonds aren't worth keeping. Kael opened his mouth, closed it. Blood trickled from his left ear. He looked shattered. Good. Let him know what it felt like. This isn't over, Marcus said, struggling to his feet. His voice was hoarse. You can't just... People will come looking for you. Other packs. The council? Let them come. Baelor's smile was all teeth. I've been asleep for 1,000 years. I'm overdue for some entertainment. You'll start a war. You'll start a war, Baelor corrected. If you keep pursuing someone who doesn't want to be found. If you can't accept that your hierarchy was built on lies and fear. His eyes burned silver. But go ahead. Gather your forces. Make your plans. And we'll show you exactly what singers were capable of before you hunted them to extinction. He pulled Elara back toward the entrance to his mountain stronghold. She went willingly, not looking back this time. Behind them, the hunting party remained frozen, broken, afraid. It wasn't until they were deep inside the mountain, until the entrance had sealed behind them with a grinding of stone, that Elara finally let herself shake. I hurt them, she whispered. Yes. I could have killed them. Yes. I wanted to. Baelor turned her to face him, his hands on her shoulders. And you didn't. You stopped when I asked. That's what matters. Is it? Elara looked up at him, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. Because it felt good, Baelor. Hurting them felt really good. I know. His voice was infinitely gentle. Power always does, especially when it's used against people who hurt you first. He wiped her tears with his thumb. But you're not a monster, Elara. You're just someone who finally learned to fight back. What's the difference? Monsters enjoy the suffering. You just wanted them to stop. He pulled her into an embrace, and she collapsed against him, exhausted. There's nothing wrong with defending yourself, with making them understand they can't touch you anymore. They look so scared. Good, they should be. He stroked her hair. Fear is the only language bullies understand, and for once, you weren't the one who was afraid. Elara closed her eyes, breathing in his scent, winter and starlight, and something ancient. The bond between them pulsed steady and warm, so different from the violent shattering she'd felt earlier. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now?" Valor's chest rumbled with dark amusement. "Now we prepare. Because you just declared war on the entire pack system, whether you meant to or not." He pulled back to look at her. "They'll come for you, Elara. All of them. And when they do, we need to be ready." "How do we get ready for that?" "We make you stronger." His smile was fierce. "We teach you everything your ancestors knew. We turn you from a girl who survived into a woman who conquers." His eyes glowed brighter. "We make sure that when they come with their armies and their righteous fury, you're strong enough to sing them all into dust." Elara should have been terrified, but standing there in the heart of an ancient mountain, bonded to a king out of legends, feeling power singing through her veins for the first time in her life, she smiled. "When do we start?" Valor's answering grin was absolutely wicked. "Right now." The training began immediately, and it was nothing like Elara had imagined. Valor led her deeper into the mountain, through corridors that seemed to reshape themselves as they walked, until they reached a chamber so vast she couldn't see the ceiling. The walls pulsed with light, not the steady glow from before, but something alive, breathing, aware. "This is the heart," Valor said, his voice echoing strangely in the space. "Where the first singers learned to shape their power, where your ancestors stood before they were hunted down." He turned to face her. "It will respond to you, test you, and possibly break you if you're not careful." "Comforting," Elara muttered. "I'm not here to comfort you." His expression was serious. "I'm here to make sure you survive what's coming, and that requires honesty, not kindness." He was right. She knew he was right. But part of her, the part that was still the scared girl from Blackridge, wanted him to tell her it would be easy, that she'd be fine. She swallowed that part down. "What do I do?" "Thing." Valor gestured to the center of the chamber. "But this time, don't just release emotion. Shape it. Give it form, purpose, direction. The heart will amplify whatever you create, so be precise." Elara walked to where he indicated, her footsteps echoing. The air felt thick here, pregnant with possibility. She closed her eyes and took a breath. Then she sang. The first note came out shaky, uncertain. Nothing happened. She tried again, pushing harder, but the sound felt flat, powerless. Frustration built in her chest. "Stop," Valor commanded. "You're trying to force it. That's not how this works." "Then how does it work?" she snapped, spinning to face him. "Because from where I'm standing, I have no idea what I'm doing." "Exactly." He moved closer. "You're thinking too much. Trying to control something that can't be controlled, only directed." His hand touched her chest, right over her heart. "It starts here, not in your head. What do you feel?" "Angry," she admitted. "Scared? Confused?" "Good. Use that." His silver eyes locked onto hers. "Pick one emotion and give it a voice. Don't think about how it should sound. Just let it out." Elara closed her eyes again. She thought about Kael's face when he'd rejected her, about the hunting party's fear, about 17 years of being invisible. She opened her mouth and let the rage pour out. This time, the sound was different, raw, primal. It wasn't pretty or controlled or anything like music. It was pure feeling made audible. And the heart responded. Light exploded around her, patterns forming in the air itself. They looked almost like words, but in a language she didn't know, spinning and weaving and building into something larger. The ground beneath her feet cracked, symbols burning themselves into stone. "Yes!" Valor's voice was triumphant. "Now sustain it. Hold that feeling and let it grow." She did. The light grew brighter, the patterns more complex. She could feel the power flowing through her, responding to her will, eager to be shaped into something real. And then she lost control. The sound spiked, too loud, too much. Pain lanced through her throat. The light turned blinding, the patterns chaotic. She tried to stop, tried to pull back, but the power had momentum now. And she didn't know how to... Valor's arms wrapped around her from behind, his own power flooding into her, steadying her, guiding the chaotic energy back into something manageable. His voice rumbled against her ear. Breathe. Let it go slowly. Don't fight it. Just release. She followed his lead, letting the sound fade gradually until silence returned. The light dimmed. The patterns dissolved. She sagged against him, gasping. That was sloppy, Veilor finished. Dangerous. And absolutely magnificent for a first real attempt. I almost killed us both. Almost doesn't count. He turned her around, a slight smile on his face. You felt it, though, didn't you? The potential. What you could do if you learned control. For those few seconds before everything went wrong, she'd felt like she could reshape reality itself, like the world was clay waiting for her to mold it. It was terrifying. It was addictive. Again, Veilor said. They trained for hours, or maybe days. Time felt strange in the heart, elastic and uncertain. Elara lost count of how many times she sang, how many times she failed, how many times Veilor had to pull her back from the edge of destroying herself. But slowly, incrementally, she got better. She learned to hold a note steady while pouring intention into it, learned to visualize what she wanted before giving it voice, learned the difference between forcing power and inviting it. Create light, Veilor instructed during one session. She sang soft and clear, and a sphere of golden radiance formed in her palm. Good. Now make it move. She adjusted the melody slightly, and the sphere drifted upward, floating lazy circles above their heads. Now make it burn. She changed the tone again, adding heat to the intention, and the sphere flared bright enough to cast shadows. Now make it dance. The melody became playful, lilting, and the sphere split into dozens of smaller lights that swirled and spun like fireflies. Veilor watched with satisfaction. You're learning. Now unmake it. She stopped singing, and the lights vanished as if they'd never existed. That's the first lesson, he said. Creation is easy. Uncreation is harder. Remember that. Between training sessions, they talked. Or rather, Veilor talked, and Elara listened, absorbing information about a world she'd never known existed. The 5 packs weren't always 5, he explained one night, or what felt like night, though they were too deep in the mountain to see the sky. They sat in a smaller chamber with walls carved to look like a forest, incredibly detailed. Once there were hundreds, thousands, each with their own territories, their own ways, but they all feared one thing. Singers, Elara guessed. Singers, he confirmed, because they, couldn't be controlled. A singer could walk into an alpha's stronghold and sing his entire pack into submission without lifting a finger, could reshape borders with a melody, could call storms, heal wounds, break minds. His expression darkened. So the alphas made a pact. They hunted us, killed us, bred the gift out of the bloodlines until it was nothing but a myth. But you survived. I hid. His smile was bitter. Chose sleep over death, bound myself to these mountains and waited for someone, anyone, to wake me. He looked at her. I waited 1,000 years, Elara, and in all that time, not a single voice called to me, until yours. The weight of that hit her. 1,000 years of silence. I'm sorry, she said quietly. Don't be. He reached out and touched her face. You were worth the wait. The bond between them pulsed warm at the words, and Elara felt heat rise in her cheeks. She still wasn't used to this, being wanted, being valued, being enough. Tell me about the Weavers, she said, partly to distract herself. About what they could really do. Veilor's eyes grew distant, remembering. They could sing life into the dying. Not healing, actual resurrection, in the moments right after death. They could change the weather, the seasons. There are stories of weavers who sang entire mountains into new shapes. He paused. And then there were the war songs. War songs? Songs that didn't create or heal. They destroyed. Unmade things at a fundamental level. His voice was grim. A trained weaver could sing an enemy into madness, into forgetting who they were, into simply ceasing to exist. Elara's throat went dry. That's why they were hunted, yes. Valor met her gaze. Power like that can't be allowed to exist without consequence. The Alphas understood that. They were terrified, and terror makes people cruel. Were they wrong? Elara asked quietly. To be afraid? Vialor considered this. No, he said finally. They were right to fear, but they were wrong to kill. Fear should lead to respect, to boundaries, to careful coexistence, not genocide. What if I become like that? The question burst out of her. What if I learn all this power and I lose myself in it? Become something worse than them? You won't. How do you know? Because you're asking the question. Valor's voice was gentle. Monsters don't worry about becoming monsters. They just are. He stood, offering her his hand. Come. There's something I want to show you. He led her through more corridors to a chamber she hadn't seen before. The walls here were different, covered in names, thousands of them, carved in elegant script. The Weaver families, Valor explained. Every singer who lived and died before the Purge. This is your heritage, Elara, your people. She walked along the wall, trailing her fingers over the names. They were beautiful: Silverthroat, Nightsong, Dawncaller, Stormweaver. Each one represented a life, a voice, a person who'd been hunted down for the crime of being born different. Near the bottom of one wall, she found a name that made her freeze. Vane. Her family name. Her bloodline. I thought you'd want to see it, Valor said softly from behind her. You're not alone, Elara. You never were. You're part of something older and greater than any of them could imagine. Tears blurred her vision. She traced the carved letters, feeling connection to people she'd never met, would never meet, families she'd never known existed. Thank you, she whispered. They stood there in silence for a long time, surrounded by the names of the dead. It was Valor who finally spoke. We should go back. You need rest before... A sound echoed through the mountain, distant but clear. A horn. Valor's expression went cold. They're here. Who? Everyone. He grabbed her hand. The packs, all of them. I can feel them at the base of the mountain. His jaw tightened. Marcus must have called in every favor he had. There are hundreds of them. Elara's heart hammered. What do we do? We have two choices. Valor turned to her, his eyes deadly serious. We can stay hidden. These mountains have defenses they can't breach. We could wait them out. Or we face them. You show them what you've become. Make them understand that you're not prey anymore. He studied her face. But if we do that, there's no going back. You'll be making a statement that will echo through every pack territory. You'll be starting a war. I thought we already started one. No, we made a threat. This would be following through. His grip on her hand tightened. Are you ready for that? Was she? 5 days ago, or however long it had been, she'd been scrubbing floors. Now she was being asked to stand against an army. It was insane. It was impossible. It was exactly what they'd spent all this time training for. How many can you feel, Mom? She asked. Vialor closed his eyes, concentrating. 300, maybe more. Warriors from all 5 packs, plus some I don't recognize. They've brought their best. Can we win? Depends on what you mean by win. He opened his eyes. Can I kill them all? Yes. Can you? With more training, probably. But that's not winning. That's slaughter. And it would make you exactly what they fear. Then what do? We break them without killing them. Valor's smile was sharp. We show them something so far beyond their understanding that they have no choice but to recognize you're not just an Omega who got lucky. You're a force of nature. The horn sounded again, closer. Elara took a breath. Okay, let's do it. Are you sure? No. She met his gaze. But I'm tired of hiding, tired of being afraid. If they want to see what I've become, let them see. Valor pulled her close and kissed her forehead. My brave little singer, he murmured. Let's show them why the old world fell. They walked toward the mountain's entrance, and with each step, Elara felt her power rising. The bond with Valor amplified it, doubled it. until she could barely contain the energy humming through her veins. The entrance ground open at their approach, spilling morning light into the corridor. They stepped out onto the mountainside, and Elara's breath caught. The valley below was filled with wolves, hundreds of them, in both human and animal form, spread out in military formation. Banners from all 5 packs flew in the wind. At the front stood the alphas, Marcus, and 4 others she didn't recognize. Kael was there too, his face unreadable from this distance. "Valor Nix!" Marcus's voice boomed across the valley. "We've come for the girl. Send her out and we'll leave peacefully." "No, you won't," Valor called back. "You'll take her, lock her up, and spend the rest of your lives making sure she never threatens your precious hierarchy again. She's dangerous, unstable. She needs to be contained for everyone's safety, including her own. The only danger here is you." Valor's power flared, and several wolves in the valley stumbled. "You hunted her kind to extinction, and now you're terrified one survived." "That's not safety, that's control." Another alpha stepped forward, a woman with silver hair and cruel eyes. "This is your last chance. Surrender the singer or we take her by force." "You're welcome to try," Valor said pleasantly. "But I should warn you, she's not the frightened child you remember." "Prove it," the woman snarled. "Let her speak for herself, if she's so powerful." Valor glanced at Elara. "Your move." Elara stepped forward, her heart racing but her voice steady. "I'm not going back. I'm not surrendering, and I'm not the one who should be afraid right now." "Brave words from an Omega," Marcus sneered. "But words are all you have." "Are they?" Elara tilted her head. "Then let me show you something better." She opened her mouth and sang. This time she didn't release raw emotion. This time she shaped it, controlled it, directed it exactly as Valor had taught her. Her voice carried across the valley, sweet and clear, and absolutely merciless. The ground beneath the assembled army began to shake. Not violently, just enough to unsettle them, enough to make them look down, see the symbols burning themselves into the earth at their feet. Ancient words in a forgotten language, spreading like wildfire through their ranks. "What is this?" someone shouted. "Magic!" "Impossible!" Elara kept singing, and the symbols began to glow. Brighter, brighter, until every wolf standing on them was surrounded by light. "Stop her!" the silver-haired alpha screamed. "Attack! Now!" Warriors surged forward, but the moment they crossed the boundary of the symbols, they froze. Not physically. Elara could see them straining, trying to move, but her song held them in place like insects in amber, all 300 of them, frozen, helpless. "That's enough," Valor murmured. Elara let the song fade, but held the symbols active. The warriors remained trapped, terror dawning in their eyes as they realized what she'd just done. "Do you understand now?" Elara's voice rang clear in the sudden silence. "I'm not weak, I'm not broken, and I'm not yours to command." "This is an abomination," Marcus spat, though fear cracked his voice. "You've become exactly what the old stories warned us about." "The old stories were written by the ones who won," Elara interrupted. "By the ones who committed genocide and called it necessary. But you forgot something important." "What's that?" "Survivors remember." She descended from the mountainside, Valor at her side, walking through the frozen army like they were statues. "Every cruelty, every betrayal, every moment you made us believe we deserved our suffering." She stopped in front of Marcus, and eventually, survivors stopped running. "If you're going to kill us," the silver-haired alpha said coldly, "get it over with." "Kill you?" Elara looked at her with something like pity. "Why would I kill you? That would make me the monster you already think I am." She raised her voice so all could hear. "I'm not here to destroy you. I'm here to give you a choice." "What choice?" Kael's voice. He was trapped like the others, but his eyes were locked on her. Simple. Elara met his gaze. "Acknowledge what you did was wrong. Reform your system so no Omega, no one, is ever treated the way I was. Give voice to the voiceless, power to the powerless." She paused. "Or refuse. And I'll make sure every Omega and every pack learns what I've learned. I'll teach them to sing, and we'll see how long your hierarchy survives when the people at the bottom discover they're stronger than the ones on top. Silence. Then Marcus laughed. It was harsh, bitter. You think we'll just overturn centuries of tradition because one Omega made threats? Not threats. Elara's voice was steel. Promises. You're one girl, the silver-haired Alpha said. Even with all this power, you're still just one. Is she? The new voice came from behind the army. Everyone who could move their head turned. More figures were approaching from the south, dozens of them. And as they got closer, Elara recognized several faces. Marin, walking at the front despite her age. Other Omegas from Blackridge. And behind them, Omegas from other packs. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands, streaming across the valley. What is this? Marcus demanded. You wanted to know if I was alone? Elara smiled. I sent word through the Omega networks. Told them what happened. Told them I'd found a way to fight back. She gestured to the approaching crowd. Turns out, I'm not the only one tired of being invisible. The Omegas filled the valley, surrounding the trapped warriors. They didn't speak, didn't threaten. They just stood there, silent witnesses to what was happening. You can't, Marcus started. Can't what? Marin stepped forward, her old voice carrying surprising strength. Can't organize? Can't think for ourselves? Can't decide we're worth more than scraps? She looked at Elara with fierce pride. That girl survived 17 years in your pack house because I taught her how. Because we all did. Every Omega who showed her kindness, who shared food, who covered for her when she was too tired to finish her work. Her eyes blazed. You think she's special? She is, but not because of her bloodline. Because she had the courage to stop accepting what you told her she was worth. Boo? This is treason, the silver-haired Alpha hissed. This is justice, another Omega called out. A man this time, young and strong. You built a world where we couldn't fight back, where speaking up meant death or exile. Well, we're not fighting anymore. We're watching, and when this is done, we're going to remember who stood where. The implications hit like thunder. If Elara killed the trapped warriors, she'd be alone against the world. But if she let them go, if she made her point without slaughter, she'd have thousands of witnesses who saw her show mercy, who saw her be stronger than the ones who'd hurt her. Marcus seemed to realize this too. His face went pale. What do you want? He asked quietly. I told you. Elara released the symbols, and the warriors stumbled as mobility returned. Change, real change, not promises, action. She looked around at all 5 alphas. You have 1 week. In 7 days, I want to hear that you've started implementing reforms, that Omegas have representation, that the silent have voices, that the weak are protected instead of exploited. And if we refuse, the silver-haired Alpha demanded, then I come back. Elara's voice was soft but absolute. And I bring every Omega who's tired of your system, and we don't ask nicely again. You're threatening war. You brought 300 warriors to drag one girl back to captivity, Valor interjected, his voice dry. Don't lecture us about who started this war. Kyle finally found his voice. Elara, please, can we talk? Just you and me? She looked at him for a long moment. At the desperation in his eyes, the regret. Part of her, the part that had loved him for years, wanted to say yes, but that part was dead now. No, she said simply. We have nothing to talk about. I'm sorry. His voice broke. For what I did. For how I treated you. For everything. I was wrong. Yes, you were. Elara turned away. But your apology doesn't change what happened, doesn't undo the damage, doesn't make me less than what I've become. She glanced back. You had your chance to see me, Kyle. You chose not to. Now you get to live with that choice. She started walking back toward the mountain, Valor beside her. The crowd of Omegas parted for them, some reaching out to touch her hand, her arm, as if to confirm she was real. 7 days, she called back without turning. Make them count. They were halfway to the entrance when the attack came. It happened fast. A warrior, young, probably terrified and acting on instinct, broke formation and lunged. Not at Elara, at Veilor. A blade flashed in the morning light. Time seemed to slow. Elara saw it happening, saw the blade arcing toward Veilor's back, saw the split-second decision in the warrior's eyes that would change everything. She didn't think, she sang. One note, high and sharp and absolutely furious. The warrior stopped mid-strike, froze. And then he screamed. Not pain, worse. It was the sound of someone losing themselves, of identity crumbling, of everything that made a person themselves dissolving like smoke. Elara, stop! Veilor grabbed her, breaking her concentration. The song cut off. The warrior collapsed, twitching. When he looked up, his eyes were empty, blank, like looking into a void wearing skin. Horror crashed over Elara. What did I— You unmade him, Veilor said quietly, sang away everything that made him himself. He's still alive, but— He gestured at the blank-eyed warrior. He's not in there anymore. The valley had gone silent. Even the Omegas looked terrified. Elara stared at what she'd done, at the hollow shell that had been a person moments ago. Bile rose in her throat. I didn't mean— I was just trying to stop him. I know. Veilor's voice was gentle. But that's the danger, Elara. That's why they feared weavers. Because when you're threatened, when you react on instinct, this is what happens. Marcus's voice was shaking when he spoke. You're a monster. Maybe, Elara whispered, unable to look away from the broken warrior. Or maybe you made me one. She turned and ran into the mountain, Veilor's voice calling after her, the shocked silence of thousands following her into the darkness. Deep inside, she finally stopped, collapsing against a wall. Tears streamed down her face. I didn't mean to, she sobbed. I just wanted him to stop. I know. Veilor had followed, was kneeling beside her. It was instinct, reflex. You were protecting me. I destroyed him. Yes. He didn't lie, didn't soften it. You did. And that's something you'll have to carry. He tilted her chin up, made her meet his eyes. But it doesn't make you evil. It makes you dangerous. There's a difference. Is there? Elara's voice was broken. Because from where I'm sitting, it feels the same. Evil destroys because it wants to. Dangerous destroys because it must. Veilor brushed tears from her cheeks. You acted to save a life. Mine. The cost was terrible, but the intention matters. Tell that to him. To what's left of him. I can't. Veilor's expression was sad. Nothing can fix what happened. But you can choose what comes next. You can let this break you, make you afraid to ever use your power again. Or you can learn from it, get better, more controlled, so it never happens by accident again. Elara closed her eyes. She could still see the warrior's blank face, could still hear his scream. She'd done that, with her voice, with the gift she was supposed to use to heal, to create, to make the world better. What if I can't? She whispered. What if I'm too dangerous? What if— Then we deal with it. Veilor pulled her close. Together. That's what the bond means. You don't carry this alone. She clung to him, shaking. The power that had felt so liberating hours ago now felt like a curse. How could she ever use her voice again, knowing what it might do? Outside, she could hear movement. Voices. The army was leaving, but slowly, shocked. They'd seen what she was capable of now. The whole world had. And Elara had no idea if that made her a hero or a monster, or something far worse, both at once. 3 days passed before Elara could bring herself to leave the inner chambers. 3 days of nightmares where blank eyes stared at her from shadows. 3 days of Veilor sitting with her in silence because words felt useless. 3 days of her voice locked so tight in her throat, she wondered if she'd ever sing again. On the 4th morning, she woke to find him gone. Panic flared immediately. She reached for the bond and found him still close, just deeper in the mountain. Following that connection, she wound through corridors until she heard voices, his and another she didn't recognize. Can't stay hidden forever, the stranger was saying. Word is spreading. Some packs are calling for your heads. Others are demanding answers. Let them demand. Baelor's voice was cold. We didn't start this. Didn't you? The stranger sounded almost amused. You showed up after a millennium, claimed a forbidden bloodline, and demonstrated power that terrifies every alpha alive. What did you think would happen? Elara stepped into the chamber and both men turned. Baelor's expression softened immediately. The stranger, tall, dark-skinned, with amber eyes that marked him as wolf, studied her with unconcealed curiosity. Elara, Baelor said, this is Dominic Ashwood. He runs the Omega networks across all territories. Networks? Elara's voice came out rough from disuse. Communication channels. Dominic's smile was wry. Ways for Omegas to talk to each other without the Alphas knowing. How do you think thousands of them learned about you so quickly? He gestured to a chair. Sit. We need to discuss what happens next. Elara sat, though every instinct screamed at her to run back to her room. What is there to discuss? I made demands. They have 4 days left to respond. And then what? Dominic leaned forward. Say they refuse. Say they call your bluff. Are you really prepared to wage war against 5 packs? Against the entire wolf nation? If I have to, you'd lose. His voice was matter-of-fact. Not because you're not powerful, because war isn't won by power alone. It's won by resources, allies, strategy, and right now you have exactly one ally, him. He jerked his chin at Baelor. That's not enough. The Omegas are not warriors, Dominic interrupted gently. They're survivors, supporters, witnesses, but they can't fight. Most of them have never been trained, never been allowed near weapons. You can't build an army from people who've spent their lives being told they're worthless. The truth of it hit hard. Elara looked at Baelor. Is he right? About the Omegas not being soldiers? Yes. Baelor's jaw was tight. About you needing more allies? Also yes. He met Dominic's gaze, which is why he's here. I represent more than just Omegas, Dominic said. There are betas, even some lower-ranked alphas who are tired of the current system, who see the cracks in the hierarchy and want change. But they need proof it's possible. Need to see that standing against the 5 packs won't just get them killed. What kind of proof? The kind where you don't destroy people. Dominic's amber eyes were sharp. What happened in that valley? The warrior you unmade. It's all anyone's talking about. Some are calling you a monster. Others are saying you're a weapon of last resort. But no one's calling you a leader. The word stung. I didn't ask to be a leader. No. You asked to be free, to be safe, to be seen. Dominic stood, pacing. But the moment you stood up, the moment you showed what you could do, you became a symbol. And symbols don't get to choose what they represent. He stopped, looking at her seriously. Right now, you represent fear, power without control. The exact thing the alphas have been warning about for generations. So what am I supposed to do? Frustration edged Elara's voice. Apologize? Pretend I'm not dangerous? Go back to being nothing? No. Dominic's voice softened. You prove them wrong. You show that power can be controlled, that strength can be merciful, that someone who was broken can heal instead of just breaking others in return. How? There's a situation, Baelor said quietly. In Ironpaw territory. Dominic brought word this morning. Dominic nodded. 2 days ago, a hunting accident. An alpha's son, 18 years old, took a fall that should have killed him. Somehow he survived, but he's trapped in his own mind, won't wake. The healers say there's nothing physically wrong, but mentally. He shrugged. He's gone, like someone cut the threads that connect his consciousness to his body. Elara's stomach dropped. Like what I did. Similar. Yes, except this was an accident, and from what I understand, reversible, if you have the right skills. Dominic met her gaze. The boy's father is Alpha Garrett of Ironpaw, one of the 5 who brought the army against you. He's desperate, would do anything to get his son back. Including listening to an Omega, Baelor finished. Understanding dawned. You want me to heal him. I want you to try. Dominic's voice was careful. If you succeed, you prove you're not just destruction. You prove weavers can build as well as break. And you gain an ally in one of the most powerful alphas in the region. And if I fail, then we're no worse off than we are now. Valor moved to stand beside her chair. But I've seen you create light, reshape matter, freeze 300 warriors without harming them. Healing a broken mind is within your capabilities. You just need to believe it. Elara closed her eyes. The thought of singing again, of using the power that had destroyed someone, made her nauseous. But Dominic was right. She couldn't hide forever. Couldn't let fear make her silent again. That's what they'd wanted all along. When do we leave? She asked quietly. Valor's hand found her shoulder warm and steady. Whenever you're ready. She wasn't ready, might never be ready, but she stood anyway. The journey to Ironpaw territory took most of the day. Valor carried her again, flying over forests and rivers that blurred together below. Dominic traveled separately, taking the ground routes to avoid drawing attention. They landed just outside Ironpaw's main settlement as the sun touched the western peaks. It was smaller than Blackridge's pack house, but built with the same brutal efficiency, all stone and timber, designed to withstand sieges. They're expecting us, Valor said, setting her down gently. But that doesn't mean they'll be friendly. He was right. The moment they approached, guards flanked them. 8 warriors in fighting stance, weapons visible. No one attacked, but the threat was clear. Valor Nix, one guard said, voice tight. Alpha Garrett will see you. The girl comes too. But you make one wrong move. Yes, you'll try to kill us. Valor sounded bored. We've heard it before. Lead on. They were escorted through the settlement, past wolves who watched with expressions ranging from fear to hatred to desperate hope. Elara kept her eyes forward, her hands clenched to stop their shaking. Alpha Garrett met them in what looked like a healer's chamber. He was a massive man, gray-haired and scarred, with eyes that had probably been fierce once, but now just looked tired, broken. You came, he said, his voice rough. We came, Valor confirmed. Where is he? Garrett gestured to a bed in the corner. A young man lay there, perfectly still except for the shallow rise and fall of his chest. His eyes were open but unseen, staring at nothing. Elara's breath caught. He looked just like the warrior from the valley. The healers say he's trapped, Garrett said quietly. That his body's fine, but his mind is somewhere else, somewhere they can't reach. He looked at Elara, and for the first time there was no contempt in his gaze, just raw desperation. They say you might be able to help. I don't know if I can, Elara admitted. What happened to him? It wasn't like what I did. This was an accident. Does it matter? Garrett moved closer. My son is gone. If there's even a chance you can bring him back, I'm begging you to try. The proud Alpha was begging an Omega. The world really was changing. Elara approached the bed slowly. Up close, she could see the boy was breathing normally, his color good. But his eyes were wrong, empty. Looking at him made her chest ache with guilt for what she'd done to someone else's son. I'll try, she said, but I need everyone to leave, just me and him. No. Garrett's response was immediate. I'm not leaving you alone with, then I can't help him. Elara met his gaze steadily. What I'm going to attempt requires complete focus. Any distraction could make things worse. So either you trust me or you don't. Your choice. Garrett looked like he wanted to argue, but after a long moment he nodded. 10 minutes. If he's not better by then, we're coming back in. Fair enough? The room emptied. Valor was the last to leave, pausing at the door. You can do this, he said quietly. Then she was alone with the broken boy. Elara pulled a chair close to the bed and sat, studying his empty face. She had no idea what she was doing. No training in healing, no knowledge of how to fix a shattered mind. All she had was instinct and desperation. She took a breath and began to sing, soft at first, a gentle melody with no words, just sound. She let it fill the space between them, searching for something, some echo of who the boy had been before the accident tore him away. Nothing. She pushed harder, adding layers to the melody. imagining threads of light extending from her voice into his mind, searching for any spark of consciousness. Still nothing. Frustration built. Maybe she couldn't do this. Maybe healing was different from destruction, required skills she'd never learned. Wait. There. So faint, she almost missed it. A flicker. A tiny pulse of something responding to her song. Elara latched onto it, pouring more intention into the melody. Not forcing, inviting, coaxing that tiny spark to grow, to remember what it had been, to find its way back. The boy's fingers twitched. Encouraged, Elara sang louder. She wove images into the sound, memories she'd never seen but somehow knew. A child running through forests, a teenager's first hunt, the moment he'd fallen, the terror, the darkness swallowing him whole. And then she sang a bridge, a path back, a melody that said, "You're not lost, you're just far away, and I'm showing you how to come home." The boy's eyes blinked. Elara's heart raced, but she kept singing, kept building that bridge of sound and light and desperate hope. His fingers moved again, then his hand. His breathing deepened. "Come on," she thought. "You're almost there. Just a little further. One final push." She poured everything she had into the song, not power, but compassion, understanding. The promise that someone was here, someone was reaching for him, someone wouldn't let him stay lost in the dark. The boy gasped. His eyes focused. He looked right at her. "Mom?" he croaked. Elara nearly sobbed with relief. "No, not your mom. But she's close. Hold on." She stood and opened the door. The hallway was packed with people. Garrett, Valor, guards, healers, all of them staring at her. "He's awake," she said simply. Garrett pushed past her, rushing to his son's bedside. The boy sat up slowly, confused but clearly present, clearly himself again. "Dad? What happened? Where am I?" Garrett pulled him into a crushing embrace, and Elara heard the big man's shoulders shake with sobs. The healers swarmed in, checking vitals, asking questions. Through it all, the boy remained conscious, responsive, whole. Valor's hand found Elara's and squeezed. "You did it," he murmured. "I did it," she repeated, still not quite believing it. Garrett finally pulled away from his son, turning to face Elara. His eyes were red, his face wet with tears, but when he dropped to one knee, every person in the hallway went silent. "I was wrong about you," he said, his voice thick. "I stood with Marcus, brought my warriors to drag you back, called you a monster." He bowed his head. "I was wrong, and I'm sorry." Elara stared at the kneeling Alpha, her mind reeling. You don't have to." "Yes, I do." Garrett looked up at her. "You could have refused, could have let my son stay lost as punishment for what I did. But you didn't. You healed him even though I didn't deserve your mercy." He stood, and his voice carried through the pack house. From this moment, Iron Paw recognizes Elara Vane, not as Omega, not as exile, as Alpha Queen in her own right. The title sent shockwaves through the assembled wolves, an Alpha Queen, equal to an Alpha King, a rank that hadn't existed in living memory. "I can't accept that," Elara said quickly. "I don't have a pack. I'm not—" "You have Omegas across 5 territories who'd follow you anywhere," Dominic's voice came from the crowd. "You have me. You have anyone who's tired of the old ways." He stepped forward. "Alpha Garrett's right. You're not an Omega anymore. You're something new, something we need. The other Alphas will never agree. Let them try to stop it," Garrett said flatly. "Iron Paw stands with you. And when word spreads about what you did today, healing what everyone said was impossible, others will too." Elara looked at Valor, desperate for guidance. He just smiled. "Your choice, Hue," he said. "But for what it's worth, you've already been leading. You just didn't have the title yet." She wanted to argue, wanted to say she was just a girl who'd gotten lucky, who'd stumbled into power she barely understood. But looking around at the faces watching her, hope mixed with fear, desperate for someone to prove change was possible, she realized Dominic had been right. She was a symbol now. The only question was what kind. "If I accept this," she said slowly, "things change. Not just for me, For everyone. She looked at Garrett. Omegas get representation in pack decisions. Real representation, not token positions. They get training if they want it. Protection. Voices. Done, Garrett said immediately. And anyone, Omega, Beta, Alpha, who wants to join my pack can, without losing their current pack status. Dual citizenship. That's unprecedented. So is an Alpha Queen, Elara interrupted. So is a Weaver who survived extinction. We're already breaking every rule. Might as well break them completely. Garrett considered this. Then, slowly, he nodded. Agreed, though the other Alphas will fight it. Then we fight back. Elara's voice was stronger now. Not with violence, with proof that another way works. That hierarchy based on birth is weaker than community based on choice. Pretty words, a healer muttered. Let's see if they survive reality. They will, Valor said quietly, because she's not alone anymore. Over the next 2 days, word spread like wildfire. The Omega who'd been publicly rejected had healed an Alpha's son, had been recognized as Alpha Queen, was building something new. Wolves from across territories started arriving, some curious, some skeptical, some desperate for the change she represented. Elara met with all of them, listening to stories that broke her heart. An Omega beaten for speaking out of turn. A Beta passed over for promotion because he'd defended a weaker packmate. An Alpha's daughter forced into a mating she didn't want because it strengthened alliances. Each story reinforced why this mattered, why she couldn't back down now, even if she wanted to. On the 6th day, 1 day before her deadline, a messenger arrived from Blackridge. Marcus wanted to negotiate. It's a trap, Dominic said immediately when he heard. He'll try to take you hostage, or he's actually considering change, Garrett countered. Stranger things have happened, like an Omega becoming Alpha Queen. What do you think? Elara asked Valor. He was quiet for a moment. I think Marcus is proud and stubborn, but not stupid. He's watched Ironpaw switch sides, watched Omegas organize, watched his power base crack. He met her gaze. He knows you're not going away. The question is whether he'd rather adapt or fight a war he can't win. So it could be genuine. Or it could be a trap. Violor's smile was sharp. Only one way to find out. They met at neutral ground, an old trading post halfway between Ironpaw and Blackridge territories. Marcus brought Kael and 2 guards. Elara brought Valor, Garrett, and Dominic. The tension was immediate and thick. You wanted to talk, Elara said, not bothering with pleasantries. Talk. Marcus looked older than she remembered, tired. The Omega networks are organizing. Ironpaw has declared you Alpha Queen. Omegas are demanding rights they've never had. He rubbed his face. If I don't respond, Blackridge falls apart from the inside. Half my pack is already questioning the hierarchy. Good, Elara said flatly. Is it? Marcus's eyes flashed. Because from where I'm standing, you're tearing apart a system that's kept our people safe for centuries. Safe for who? Dominic interjected. Your warriors, your betas, not the Omegas. We've never been safe. We're not here to debate history, Garrett said impatiently. Marcus, you called this meeting. What are you offering? Marcus took a breath. Limited reforms. Omega councils in each pack, protected status, training opportunities for those who want them. He looked at Elara. It's not everything you demanded, but it's a start. It's not enough, Elara said immediately. It's all I can offer without civil war in my own pack. The conservative faction, they'd rather fight than change. I'm barely holding them back as it is. Then let them fight, Valor said coldly. We'll win. Will you? Kael spoke for the first time, his voice strained. You're powerful, but you're also untrained, reactive. What happened in the valley proved that. He looked at Elara. If this turns into real war, people will die. Innocents. Omega's caught between sides. Is that what you want? The question hit harder than it should have. Because he was right. All-out war would hurt the people she was trying to protect. What I want, Elara said carefully, is for people like me to stop being treated as disposable, for the system to recognize we're equal even if we're different. She met Marcus's gaze. Your limited reforms, do they include omega representation in alpha councils? Real voting power? No, the council structure is sacred. Then it's not enough. Elara stood. You're offering scraps and calling it progress. I need actual change or there's nothing to discuss. You're being unreasonable. I'm being realistic. Elara's voice hardened. You had centuries to fix this yourselves. You chose not to. So now it gets fixed the hard way, by the people you ignored finally having power you can't dismiss. This will end in blood, Marcus warned. Maybe. Elara headed for the door. But it'll be worth it. She was outside when Kael caught up to her. Elara, wait. She stopped but didn't turn. What do you want, Kael? To apologize. Again. Properly. He moved to stand in front of her, and she was struck by how haggard he looked, like he hadn't slept in days. What I did at the ceremony, it was calculated cruelty. I told myself it was necessary, but the truth is, I was scared. Scared of what a bond with you might mean, scared of choosing heart over duty. And now? Her voice was flat. Now I'd give anything to take it back. His storm-gray eyes were desperate. I see what you've become. What you always were underneath if I just looked. And his voice broke. I threw away something irreplaceable. Yes, Elara said simply. You did. Is there any chance, any at all, that you could forgive me? Not forget. I know I don't deserve that, but maybe someday. Kael. She cut him off gently. I don't hate you. I don't even blame you anymore. You did what you were raised to do. Put Pack above everything, even people. She met his gaze. But forgiveness doesn't mean going back. I'm not that girl anymore. And honestly, I don't want to be. I know, He swallowed hard. I want you to be happy, even if it's not with me. Something in Elara's chest loosened. Not forgiveness exactly, but maybe the beginning of letting go. I am happy, she said, and realized it was true. For the first time in my life, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Kael nodded slowly. Then he did something she never expected. He knelt. I, Kael Draven, acknowledge Elara Vane as Alpha Queen. Whatever my father decides, whatever Blackridge does, you have my loyalty. He looked up at her. It's not much, but it's all I have to give. Elara stared at him, the future Alpha of Blackridge, kneeling in the dirt before an Omega he'd destroyed. The symbolism was staggering, and every wolf present saw it. Get up, she said quietly. You don't need to kneel to me. Yes, Kael said as he rose. I do. We all do. That's what I'm starting to understand. Valor appeared at Elara's side, his hand finding hers. Kael's eyes tracked the movement, but he didn't flinch. Take care of her, he said to Valor. Always, Valor replied. There was no gloating in his voice, just simple fact. They left the trading post as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of amber and crimson. Behind them, Marcus and his guards watched in silence. That went better than expected, Dominic said once they were clear. Did it? Elara was still processing Kael's declaration. You got a future Alpha's public loyalty. Word of that spreads, and Marcus's position becomes untenable. Dominic's smile was satisfied. Conservative faction or not, he'll have to implement real reforms now. Otherwise, he risks losing his own son to your cause. I don't want to split families. You're not splitting anything, Garrett interrupted. You're giving people choices they never had before. If some choose differently than their families, that's growth. Painful, but necessary. That night, back at Ironpaw, Elara stood on a balcony overlooking the settlement. Lights flickered in windows. Voices drifted up. Laughter, conversation, life continuing. You're thinking too loud, Valor said, joining her. Just processing. She leaned into his warmth. A week ago, I was nobody. Now I'm apparently leading a revolution. Does it scare you? Terrifies me. She paused, but also feels right. Like this is what I was always supposed to do, I just didn't know it yet. The best leaders usually don't seek power, Valor mused. They have it thrust upon them and rise to meet it. You're rising, little singer. What if I fail? What if I make things worse? Then you fail and try again. His arm wrapped around her waist. But you won't. You know why? Why? Because you're not doing this for power or glory. You're doing it because you remember what it felt like to be powerless, and that empathy, that memory, will keep you honest when others would become corrupt. Below, she spotted a group of Omegas gathered near a fire. One was demonstrating something, combat stance maybe, teaching the others how to defend themselves. A week ago, that would have been forbidden, punished. Now it was just wolves helping each other survive. It's working, she whispered. It's actually working. Did you doubt it would? Every second of every day. She smiled despite herself. But I'm learning to work through the doubt instead of letting it stop me. Good. Valor pressed a kiss to her temple. Because tomorrow, we take this to the next level. What do you mean? Garrett and I have been talking. There are 3 other packs besides Blackridge who haven't responded to your demands. His eyes glowed in the darkness. We're going to visit each one, give them the same choice you gave the others, adapt or watch their Omegas leave. That's aggressive. That's necessary. His voice was firm. You gave them a week. The week's almost up. Time to show them you meant every word. Elara took a breath. He was right. She'd made demands. Now she had to follow through. Tomorrow then, she said, we change the world. No. Valor turned her to face him, his expression fierce and proud and full of something that made her heart race. You already changed it. Tomorrow we just make sure everyone knows. He kissed her then, deep and claiming, and through their bond Elara felt his absolute conviction. She was Alpha Queen. She was a force that would reshape everything, and the old world, the cruel, broken hierarchy that had tried to destroy her, didn't stand a chance. When they finally pulled apart, Elara looked out over Ironpaw territory one more time. In the distance, she could see lights from other settlements, other packs, other wolves who didn't know yet that everything was about to change. But they would. Soon, they all would. Because the girl no one chose had become the queen no one could ignore. And she was just getting started. The morning broke cold and sharp, the kind of dawn that felt like a blade against skin. Elara stood in Ironpaw's central square, surrounded by nearly 200 wolves who'd gathered before sunrise. Not just Omegas anymore, betas, young alphas, even some elders who remembered when things had been different. They'll be watching, Garrett warned, adjusting his travel pack. Stonecrest, Ashenmoor, and Bloodmark. The moment we enter their territories, they'll know. Good, Elara said, her voice steady despite the nerves coiling in her stomach. Let them watch. Let them see we're not hiding anymore. Valor moved beside her, his presence solid and reassuring. The plan is simple. We go to each pack. We ask for their answer to your demands. If they agree to reforms, we celebrate. If they refuse, we show them what happens when Omegas stop accepting scraps, Dominic finished. He'd brought 20 of his network leaders, wolves who could coordinate Omega walkouts across all 3 territories simultaneously. No violence, just absence. Let's see how well their packs function when the people who do the actual work simply stop. It was a gamble, a massive, terrifying gamble, but it was also the only leverage they had besides Elara's power, and she'd sworn not to use that unless absolutely necessary, not after what had happened in the valley. The warrior's blank eyes still haunted her dreams. Stonecrest first, Garrett said. Alpha Helena is the most reasonable of the 3. If we can win her over, the others might follow. They set out as the sun cleared the eastern peaks, a mixed group that would have been unthinkable a month ago. An ancient king, an Alpha Queen who'd been Omega, an Alpha who'd switched sides, and dozens of wolves who'd chosen loyalty to a vision over loyalty to tradition. The journey to Stonecrest took most of the morning. The territory was harsher than Ironpaw's, all rocky cliffs and sparse vegetation. The pack house itself was built into a canyon wall, defensible and imposing. Guards met them at the border. Unlike Ironpaw's initial hostility, these wolves looked more curious than aggressive. Alpha Helena is expecting you, their captain said. She's granted you safe passage, but your group needs to leave weapons here. We're not armed, Elara said truthfully. Her only weapon was her voice, and that couldn't be confiscated. They were escorted through narrow canyon paths to the pack house. Helena met them in an open courtyard, and Elara was surprised by her appearance. Small, gray-haired, with eyes that missed nothing. She looked like someone's grandmother, not one of the 5 most powerful alphas. Elara Vane, Helena said, her voice carrying surprising warmth. The girl who's turning our world upside down. I've been curious to meet you. Alpha Helena. Elara inclined her head respectfully. Thank you for seeing us. How could I not? You've given me quite the dilemma. Helena gestured for them to sit at a large stone table. My Omegas are organizing, demanding representation. Some of my Betas are questioning whether birth should determine rank. Even my own grandson asked why we don't let Omegas train for combat. She smiled slightly. You've planted seeds, child. Now I need to decide whether to let them grow or try to pull them out. And? Elara's heart raced. Helena was quiet for a moment, studying her. Tell me something. What happens after? Say I implement your reforms. Say all 5 packs do. Then what? You've destroyed the hierarchy. What replaces it? It was a fair question. One Elara had been wrestling with herself. Something better, she said finally. A system where strength still matters, but it's measured by more than fighting prowess. Where wisdom, compassion, skill, all of it counts toward rank. She leaned forward. In the old system, I would have died young, worked to death, or killed for being different. But in a new system, my gift could have been valued, protected, used to help instead of feared. Pretty words, but implementation is messy. Everything worth doing is messy, Veilor interjected. The question isn't whether it'll be difficult, it's whether you have the courage to try. Helena's eyes flashed. Don't lecture me about courage, Ancient One. I've held this pack together through winters that killed half our number, through raids and sickness and betrayals. I know what courage costs. Then you know stagnation costs more, Elara said quietly. How many Omegas has Stonecrest lost because they couldn't take it anymore? How many ran away? How many just gave up? Something flickered across Helena's face. Pain, quickly hidden. My daughter was Omega, she said softly. 30 years ago. Beautiful, brilliant girl. She begged me to change the laws, to let her be more than a servant. Helena's voice cracked. I told her tradition mattered more than her comfort, that she needed to accept her place. Silence fell like snow. She left, Helena continued, walked into the wilderness one winter night and never came back. We found her body in spring. She looked at Elara with eyes full of old grief. So don't tell me I don't understand the cost of the old ways. I've paid it. Elara felt tears prick her eyes. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Be right. Helena stood. I'll implement your reforms. Full representation. Training opportunities. Protection from abuse. Everything you demanded. She paused. But I want something in return. What? Teach me. Helena's voice was fierce. Teach me how you're building this new system, because if I'm going to dismantle what I spent my life defending, I want to make sure what replaces it is actually better, not just different. Elara looked at Veilor, who nodded slightly. Deal, she said, standing and offering her hand. Helena took it, her grip strong despite her age. My pack will stand with you, Alpha Queen, and when the others try to stop this, you'll have Stonecrest warriors at your back. One down, 2 to go. They left Stonecrest with renewed hope, but it died quickly when they reached Ashenmoor territory. Alpha Nikolai met them at the border with 50 armed warriors. Unlike Helena's curiosity or even Marcus's reluctant negotiation, Nikolai's expression was pure contempt. You're not welcome here, he said flatly. Turn around before this gets ugly. We're just here to talk, Garrett started. I don't negotiate with traitors. Nikolai's eyes fixed on him. You've sided with an Omega against your own kind. You're pathetic. Careful. Valor's voice went cold. You're talking to an alpha who had the courage to evolve. That makes him stronger than you, not weaker. The ancient relic speaks. Nikolai smiled, but it was all teeth. You know what I think? I think you saw an opportunity. Lonely old monster finds impressionable girl, fills her head with power fantasies, uses her to destabilize the packs. Classic manipulation. Elara felt rage building but forced it down. You have 3 days left to respond to my demands. That's why we're here, to hear your answer. My answer is no. Stonecrest can betray everything we stand for if they want. Ashenmore won't. Nikolai crossed his arms. Omegas serve, that's their purpose. Trying to make them something else is like trying to teach fish to climb trees, pointless and cruel. Cruel? Elara's voice rose. You think the current system isn't cruel? I think it's honest. Some are born to lead, some to follow. Pretending otherwise doesn't change nature. He looked her up and down dismissively. You got lucky. Found some ancient power, convinced a few weak alphas to kneel. But that doesn't change what you are underneath, Omega, lesser. No amount of singing changes your blood. The words should have hurt. A month ago, they would have destroyed her. Now they just made her tired. Dominic, she said quietly, make the call. Dominic pulled out a small horn and blew 3 sharp notes. The sound echoed across Ashenmore territory. Within minutes, movement began. From the pack house, from the fields, from everywhere. Omegas started walking, not running, just calmly, deliberately leaving their posts and heading toward the border. What is this? Nikolai demanded. Your answer, Elara said. You won't give Omegas rights? Fine. You don't get Omegas. She gestured to the growing crowd. See how well Ashenmore functions without the people who cook your food, clean your halls, tend your children, heal your wounded, and do 1,000 other tasks you never noticed because you took them for granted. You can't. They're people, Elara interrupted, with the right to choose, and they're choosing to leave until you treat them with basic dignity. Nikolai's face went purple. I'll drag them back. Try it, Valor said softly. See what happens when you raise a hand against people under an Alpha Queen's protection. The threat hung in the air. Nikolai looked at his warriors, at the still streaming Omegas, at Elara standing calm and certain before him. This is war, he said finally. No, Elara corrected. This is consequences. You had a choice. You chose wrong. They left Nikolai shouting behind them, his territory already starting to fracture as nearly 200 Omegas joined Elara's growing following. Bloodmark's response was different entirely. Alpha Theron didn't meet them at all. Instead, they arrived to find the pack house sealed, guards on every wall, and a message delivered by an elderly beta who looked terrified. Alpha Theron says if you don't leave immediately, he'll consider it an act of war and respond accordingly. Accordingly how? Garrett asked. The beta swallowed hard. He's taken the Omegas hostage, says if his territory loses workers like Ashenmore did, he'll make sure they never work again. His voice dropped to a whisper. Please. He's not bluffing. He's already hurt 3 who tried to leave. Ice flooded Elara's veins. He's holding them prisoner? In the lower halls, locked in. He says, the beta's voice shook. He says if you try to free them, he'll kill them rather than let them join you. Valor's power flared, the temperature dropping several degrees. He signed his own death warrant. No. Elara grabbed his arm. That's what he wants. Wants you to attack so he can claim self-defense, make me look like the aggressor. Her mind raced. We need a different approach. What approach? Dominic's face was pale. He's holding innocents hostage. We can't storm the pack house. That gets people killed. Elara looked at the sealed building, thinking hard. Then an idea came. Risky, possibly insane, but maybe the only option. I'm going in alone. Absolutely not, Valor said immediately. He wants to make me the villain. Fine. Let him try. Elara met his eyes. But I go in talking, not fighting. Give him a chance to back down before this goes somewhere none of us can come back from. He'll take you hostage, too. He'll try. Elara's voice was steady. But I'm not the same girl who could be caged anymore. If he refuses to listen, if he threatens those Omegas, then I use my voice. But I give him the chance to choose first. Garrett looked skeptical. This is incredibly dangerous. Everything we've done has been dangerous. Elara started toward the pack house. That doesn't make it wrong. Baylor caught up to her, pulling her aside. If anything happens, if you're in real danger, I'm coming in. Bond or no bond, I'll feel it. I know. She touched his face gently. But trust me to handle this, please. He closed his eyes, warring with himself. Finally, 10 minutes. If you're not out in 10 minutes, I'm leveling that building. Deal. The guards let her in after checking for weapons. They led her through stone corridors to a great hall where Theron waited. He was younger than the other alphas, maybe 40, with dark hair and eyes like chips of flint. The famous Elara Vane. His voice was mocking. Come to surrender? Come to negotiate, she corrected. Release the Omegas. Let them choose freely whether to stay or go, and I'll help you rebuild whatever systems need replacing. Generous, except I don't need your help. Theron leaned back in his chair. See, I learned from the others' mistakes. Helena went soft. Nikolai lost his workforce. But me? I secured mine. Without Omegas to leave, you have no leverage. You can't hold them forever. Can I? His smile was cruel. I'm Alpha. My word is law here, and I say those Omegas stay locked up until you and your revolution disappear. That's not going to happen. Then they stay locked up permanently. He shrugged. Your choice, really. You can have your principles or you can save them. Not both. Elara felt fury building but kept her voice calm. You're making a mistake. Am I? Because from where I'm sitting, I'm the only one who read the situation correctly. Theron stood. You've won some battles, turned some weak alphas, but you're still just one girl with limited power. You can't be everywhere. Can't protect everyone. He moved closer. So here's my counteroffer. You disband this little rebellion, tell the Omegas to go back to their packs, stop spreading sedition, and I let my prisoners go unharmed. And if I refuse, then tomorrow morning I execute one. The day after, another, and so on until you comply or I run out of hostages. His expression was utterly cold. Tick-tock, Alpha Queen. What's it going to be? For a moment, Elara just stared at him, at the casual cruelty, the absolute certainty that he held all the cards. He was wrong. You think you've trapped me, she said quietly, forced me to choose between principles and people. But you've actually done something much worse. What's that? You've made me stop caring about giving you a choice. She sang, not loud, not violent, just a single clear note that filled the hall with sound. Theron's eyes went wide as cymbals began burning themselves into the floor beneath his feet. What are you? The note changed, deepened. Elara poured intention into it, not destruction, but command. The stone walls began to resonate in response. Below them, she could feel the lower halls where the Omegas were imprisoned. Stop this, Theron shouted. Elara ignored him. Her voice grew stronger and the entire pack house started to shake. Not violently, just enough to show what she could do if she wanted. Dust fell from the ceiling, cracks appeared in the walls. You'll bring the whole building down. Then release them, Elara said, never breaking her song. Open the doors, let them go, or I'll tear this place apart stone by stone and you'll die in the rubble with it. You're bluffing. The floor beneath Theron's feet cracked. He stumbled, terror finally breaking through his confidence. Last chance, Elara said, and her voice carried absolute conviction. I've destroyed one man already by accident. Don't make me do it on purpose. Theron's face went white. You wouldn't try me. For a long, terrible moment, they stared at each other. Then Theron broke. Release them, he shouted to his guards. Open the lower halls. Let them go. Elara let the song fade but held the power ready, still humming in her throat. Below, she heard the sounds of locks opening, doors creaking, voices, confused, scared, but free. Get out, she told Theron quietly. Leave Bloodmark, because if you're still here tomorrow, if I hear you've hurt anyone, I'll come back and finish what I started. This is my pack. Was your pack? Valor's voice came from the doorway. He'd come in anyway, unable to wait. The moment you took hostages, you forfeited the right to lead them. He looked at the shaking Alpha with contempt. Leave, while you still can. Theron looked between them, at the cracked floor, at the symbols still glowing faintly. Whatever bravado he'd had was gone. He was just a scared man who'd gambled everything and lost. He ran. Outside, the Omegas were already streaming out of the lower halls. Some were crying, some looked dazed, but they were free. Are you all right? Elara asked the first one to reach her, a young woman with a bruised face. We heard singing, the woman whispered, and the doors opened. Was that you? Yes. The woman dropped to her knees. Thank you, thank you. We thought he'd actually do it, actually kill us to make a point. He would have, Elara said grimly, helping her up. But he underestimated something important. What? That people who've been broken can become unbreakable if you give them a reason. She looked at the growing crowd of freed prisoners. You're safe now, all of you, and anyone who wants to join us is welcome. Nearly all of them did. By the time they left Bloodmark territory, Elara's following had grown to over 400. 400 wolves who'd chosen her vision over tradition, who'd chosen freedom over safety. News traveled fast. By the time they returned to Ironpaw 2 days later, the entire region was buzzing. Helena had publicly declared for reform. Nikolai was struggling to keep Ashenmoor functional without Omegas. Theron had vanished, and Bloodmark was in chaos. And Blackridge. Marcus has called for a summit, Garrett announced, reading the message that had arrived that morning. All 5 alphas, or what's left of them, neutral ground, in 3 days. It's a trap, Dominic said immediately. Probably, Valor agreed, but also an opportunity. If Marcus is willing to meet publicly, it means he knows he can't win through force. Elara looked at the message, her heart pounding. This was it. The moment that would determine whether her revolution succeeded or collapsed into war. We go, she said firmly. We hear what he has to say, and we show the entire region that we're not hiding. The summit was held in the same old trading post where she'd met with Marcus before, but this time hundreds of wolves gathered to witness. Not just the alphas and their guards, everyone. Omegas, betas, young alphas, elders. Word had spread that history was being made. The 5 alphas, or 4 now, with Theron absent, sat at a long table. Helena looked determined. Nikolai looked furious. Garrett looked supportive. And Marcus just looked tired. Elara approached the table with Valor at her side. The crowd fell silent. You wanted this summit, she said to Marcus. Here I am. What do you want? Marcus stood slowly. When he spoke, his voice carried to everyone present. I've spent the last 2 weeks watching everything I believed in fall apart. Watching packs fracture, watching Omegas organize, watching you build something new. He paused, and I've had to ask myself some hard questions. Such as whether I've been holding on to tradition because it was right or because it was comfortable. Whether protecting the hierarchy was about protecting our people or protecting my own power. Marcus's voice roughened. My son told me something after you left last time. He said you made him feel ashamed, not because you were powerful, but because you'd survived things that would have broken him and still chose mercy when you could have chosen vengeance. Kael stood from where he'd been sitting with the Blackridge delegation. He looked at Elara directly. I was wrong about you, he said, his voice carrying. I thought strength meant never showing weakness. That leadership meant making hard choices without emotion. You've shown me that real strength is choosing compassion when cruelty would be easier. That real leadership means lifting people up instead of keeping them down. Marcus nodded slowly. Blackridge accepts your terms, full reforms, Omega representation, equal protection, training opportunities, all of it. He looked around at the assembled crowd. And I'm proposing something more, a new council structure. 6 packs instead of 5. With yours, Elara Vane, as the sixth, equal voice, equal power. Gasps rippled through the crowd. You can't be serious, Nikolai spat. She's not even... She's Alpha Queen, Helena interrupted. Acknowledged by Ironpaw, Stonecrest, and now Blackridge. She has more followers than some of us have in our entire packs. Whether you like it or not, Nikolai, she's a power that exists. We can either work with her or be destroyed by her. I won't. Then leave, Marcus said flatly. Go the way of Theron, but know that Ashenmoor's Omegas are already organizing. How long do you think you'll last without them? Nikolai looked around at the crowd, at the faces watching him. His fellow alphas had turned against him. His own pack was fragmenting. He had nothing left. Fine, he bit out. I'll implement the reforms, but I'm doing it under protest. Your protest is noted, Elara said, and irrelevant. She turned to address the full crowd, her voice strong and clear. For too long our people have been divided into those who matter and those who don't, those who lead and those who serve, those who speak and those who stay silent. She paused, meeting eyes across the gathering. That ends today. From this moment forward, every wolf, regardless of birth, rank, or history, has a voice, has value, has the right to choose their own path. The crowd erupted in cheers. Not everyone. Some looked skeptical, some angry, but the majority were shouting their approval, their hope, their relief that someone had finally said what they'd been afraid to say themselves. This won't be easy, Elara continued when the noise died down. Change never is. There will be resistance, setbacks, moments when it feels like we're failing. But as long as we remember why we started this, as long as we remember that every single person matters, we'll get through it. She looked at Valor, who smiled at her with fierce pride. At Garrett and Helena, who'd chosen evolution over tradition. At Kael, who'd learned to admit when he was wrong. Even at Nikolai, who was here under protest, but here nonetheless. We're building something new, she said. Not perfect, never perfect, but better than what came before. And that's enough. The summit ended with the signing of formal accords. 6 packs, equal representation, protected rights for all ranks. It was written into law, witnessed by hundreds, and would be implemented immediately. It was everything Elara had demanded. It was everything she'd fought for. It was terrifying. That night, back at Ironpaw, she stood again on the balcony where she'd stood a week ago. But everything was different now. Below, instead of quiet settlement life, there was celebration, music, dancing, wolves from all 6 packs mixing freely, sharing food and stories and hope. Having second thoughts? Valor asked, joining her. Third and fourth thoughts too, she admitted. I just changed the entire social structure of our people. What if I got it wrong? What if it works? Valor interrupted gently. What if you've given thousands of people the chance at better lives? What if you've proven that power doesn't have to corrupt, that the broken can heal, that the silenced can find their voices? You make it sound so simple. It is simple. Not easy. Simple. He pulled her close. You saw something wrong and you fixed it. The fact that it required turning the world upside down doesn't make it less right. Elara leaned into his warmth, watching the celebration below. Somewhere in that crowd was Marin, dancing with other Omegas her age, laughing like Elara had never heard her laugh. Somewhere down there were the people she'd freed from Bloodmark, building new lives. Somewhere were betas and young alphas learning that strength came in forms they'd never been taught to value. I destroyed someone, she said quietly. In the valley, I took away everything that made him himself. I know. And I'd do it again if I had to. To protect you. To protect anyone I love. She looked up at him. Does that make me a monster? Valor considered this carefully. It makes you dangerous, powerful, willing to do terrible things when necessary. He cupped her face. But the fact that you agonize over it, that you question yourself, that you choose mercy whenever possible, that's what keeps you from becoming what you fear. How do you know? Because monsters don't ask these questions. They just act. His thumb traced her cheek. You're not a monster, Elara. You're just someone who learned that sometimes protecting the innocent requires becoming the thing that keeps monsters awake at night. Below, the music shifted. Someone had started singing, not a weaver's voice, just a normal wolf singing a traditional song about new beginnings. Others joined in, harmonizing. "Sing with them," Valor urged. "I don't know if I should. After everything, that's exactly why you should." He turned her toward the celebration. "Show them your voice isn't just a weapon. It's also joy, beauty, connection, all the things they tried to take from you." Elara hesitated. Then slowly she began to sing. Her voice rose above the crowd, clear and strong, weaving through their melody like a golden thread through cloth. It didn't overpower them. It enhanced them, lifted them, made their simple song into something transcendent. The celebration paused, everyone looking up toward where she stood. For a moment, Elara felt the old fear, the fear of being seen, of being judged, of being found wanting. Then the crowd cheered, and they sang louder, inviting her voice to join theirs fully. She sang with them until her throat was raw and her eyes were wet with tears that were finally happy. The weeks that followed were chaos, good chaos mostly. The six packs implemented reforms at different speeds. Helena moved quickly, Marcus more cautiously, Nikolai dragging his feet at every step. But it was happening. Omega councils formed. Training programs started. Protection laws were enacted and, more importantly, enforced. Elara's own pack grew. She claimed a territory in the mountains near Violor's ancient stronghold, and wolves who didn't fit the traditional molds flocked to her. Omegas who wanted to be warriors. Betas with healing gifts. Young alphas who'd rather build than fight. Misfits and dreamers, and those who'd been told they weren't enough. She called it Vain Pack, after the family name she'd never really known. It wasn't perfect. There were arguments about structure, disputes over resources, moments when old prejudices surfaced and had to be addressed. But they worked through it together, learning as they went. Elara learned too. Learned to delegate instead of trying to do everything herself. Learned to accept help. Learned that leadership wasn't about being perfect. It was about being honest and willing to adapt when you got things wrong. She also learned to control her power. Valor trained her relentlessly, teaching her the difference between instinct and intention, between reacting and choosing. She practiced creation, singing flowers into bloom, reshaping stone, healing small injuries. Practiced destruction too, but carefully, with safeguards in place. She never forgot the warrior in the valley, used that memory as a reminder of what she could do if she lost control. 6 months after the summit, the Council of Six met for the first time in formal session. They gathered in neutral territory, all 6 alphas: Marcus, Helena, Nikolai, Garrett, Elara, and surprisingly, Seraphine, who'd taken over Bloodmark after Theron's disappearance and implemented reforms even more aggressive than Elara's demands. "First order of business," Helena said, calling the meeting to order. "Trade agreements between territories. Blackridge wants better access to Stonecrest's mineral deposits." The meeting was boring, wonderfully, gloriously boring. Discussions about trade and resources, and boring normal pack business instead of war and revolution. Elara caught Kael's eye across the room where he sat with his father's delegation. He smiled slightly, and she smiled back. They'd never be what they could have been, but they'd found a different kind of peace. Mutual respect, honest acknowledgement of past mistakes without letting them define the present. During a break, Marcus approached her. "I owe you an apology," he said quietly. "A real one, not the political kind." "You've already apologized. For exile, yes. For the rejection." He shook his head. "But not for the 17 years before that. For watching you scrub floors and telling myself it was natural. For seeing you hurt and doing nothing because you weren't important enough to matter." His voice roughened. "I failed you, Elara. Failed every Omega in my pack, and I'm sorry." Elara studied him. The proud alpha looked genuinely ashamed. "I accept your apology," she said finally. "But the people you really need to apologize to are the ones still in Blackridge. The ones who lived that life while you looked away." "I know, I'm working on it." He paused. "For what it's worth, you've made me a better alpha. Made all of us better. Even Nikolai, though he'd never admit it." "Change is hard," Elara said, "but worth it." Yes, Marcus smiled slightly. Though I have to say, I prefer boring council meetings to watching you tear down the world as we knew it. Me too, Elara admitted with a laugh. That evening, she returned to Vane territory to find Veilor waiting with a surprise. Close your eyes, he said. She did, letting him lead her through their home, the mountain stronghold they'd renovated together, making it less fortress and more sanctuary. Open. She opened her eyes and gasped. The Chamber of Names, the one with all the lost Weaver families, had been expanded. New names covered the walls. Not the dead, the living. Every Omega who'd joined her cause. Every wolf who'd chosen change over tradition. Hundreds of names carved carefully into stone, a permanent record of those who'd fought for something better. And at the very center, in letters that glowed with soft light, Elara Vane, Alpha Queen, first singer, the girl who rewrote the world. I didn't, her voice caught. I didn't do this alone. No, Veilor agreed. But you started it. You were the voice that woke the rest of us up. That deserves recognition. She traced her name with trembling fingers. Once, she'd been nothing. Less than nothing. A cursed Omega with silver eyes and a voice she wasn't allowed to use. Now she was written in stone. Permanent. Real. Thank you, she whispered. Veilor pulled her close. Thank you for waking me, for showing me the world still had beauty worth fighting for. They stood there in the Chamber of Names, surrounded by the past and present, until the light from the symbols faded to gentle embers. A year after the summit, Elara stood in the same valley where she'd first unmade a warrior. She'd come back occasionally since then, drawn by guilt and memory. The valley had recovered, grass grew over the scorched earth, birds nested in the surrounding trees. Nature didn't remember the violence. Only she did. The warrior lived nearby now, in a special house Elara had built for people like him, those whose minds had been broken and couldn't be fully healed. She visited him monthly, though he never recognized her, just stared with those blank eyes at something only he could see. I'm sorry, she told him every time. I'm so sorry. He never answered, never would, but she kept coming anyway, kept speaking, because forgetting would be worse than remembering. Today, though, she'd brought someone else, a young Omega named Kira, maybe 14, who'd recently discovered she could sing like Elara, the first new weaver in 1,000 years besides Elara herself. This is where it happened, Elara said quietly, standing in the center of the valley. This is where I lost control and destroyed someone. Kira's eyes were wide. Does it still hurt to remember? Every day. Elara knelt in the grass. And it should. The moment it stops hurting is the moment I've become what I was afraid of becoming. Then why show me? Why tell me about it? Because you need to understand what our power can do, the good and the terrible. Need to know that with every song you're making a choice. Create or destroy. Heal or harm. Elara looked at the girl seriously. And you need to know that if you choose wrong, even by accident, you'll carry it forever. That's terrifying. Yes. Elara stood. But the alternative, never using your voice, staying silent out of fear, that's worse. That's dying while you're still breathing. She began to sing, soft and clear. Not a song of power, just a melody. Simple, beautiful, human. Your voice isn't a weapon, she told Kira. It's a tool. What it builds or breaks depends on what you choose, and you always, always have a choice. Kira listened, absorbing the lesson. Later, as they walked back toward Vane territory, the girl asked, Do you regret it, starting all this, turning everything upside down? Elara thought about the warrior with blank eyes, about the wars that had almost happened, about the chaos and pain and difficulty of change. Then she thought about Marin laughing, about Omegas training to be warriors, about the young Alpha she'd seen yesterday teaching a beta healing techniques, the two of them working as equals, about a world where wolves could choose their paths instead of having them chosen at birth. No, she said firmly. I don't regret it, not even the hard parts. Because the alternative was staying invisible, staying silent, accepting that some lives just matter less than others. She looked at Kira, and that was never acceptable. Not for me, not for anyone. They crested a hill and vain territory spread below them. The renovated stronghold, the training grounds, the gathering halls where wolves from every background worked and lived together. It wasn't perfect. There were still arguments, still prejudices, still wolves who struggled with the new ways. But it was better. And better was enough. In the distance, she could see Valor waiting for her, his silver blue eyes catching the last rays of sunset. Her mate, her partner, the one who'd answered when her broken voice had called into the void. "Come on," she told Kira. "Let's go home." They descended the hill together, the young weaver and the Alpha Queen, walking side by side into a world that was still being written. Years would pass, the 6 packs would grow into 12, then 20. The reforms would spread beyond the northern territories to lands Elara had never seen. Other weavers would emerge, their bloodlines awakened by the knowledge that they no longer had to hide. Elara and Valor would face challenges she couldn't yet imagine, would make mistakes and fix them, would grow old together, watching the world they'd rebuilt continue evolving. But that night, standing in her home surrounded by wolves who'd chosen to follow her vision, Elara Vane, once an Omega scrubbing floors, now an Alpha Queen who'd rewritten the laws of nature, finally let herself feel it. Peace. Not perfect peace, not permanent peace, but real peace. Earned peace. The kind that came from knowing she'd fought for something worth fighting for. "Tell me a story," a young pup asked later that evening during the communal dinner. "Tell us about the girl no one chose." Elara smiled, pulling the pup onto her lap. "Once," she began, "in the frozen borderlands there lived a girl everyone overlooked, a girl who scrubbed floors and stayed silent and believed she was nothing." The pup's eyes went wide. "Were you scared?" "Terrified," Elara admitted. "But fear doesn't mean you stop. It just means what you're doing matters." "What happened to her?" another pup asked. "To the girl." Elara looked around at the faces watching her, old and young, Omega and Alpha and everything between. At Valor, who'd crossed 1,000 years to find her. At the life she'd built from the ashes of everything she'd lost. "She learned her voice," Elara said softly. "And when she sang, the whole world listened." The pups cheered, the adults smiled, and outside, under a sky full of stars, the mountains held their breath. Somewhere in the darkness, a young Omega whose name no one yet knew hummed a melody she'd learned from a dream. And deep in the earth, where old things slept, another ancient power stirred. The world was still being written, and the girl they'd cast aside had made sure it would be written by everyone, not just the strong. That was enough. That was everything. That was what it meant to survive, to rise, to become more than what others said you could be. The girl no one chose had chosen herself, and in doing so, she'd given everyone else permission to do the same.